My name is Blair, and at 33 years old, I stood on the sidewalk watching strangers carry my grandmother's antique furniture out of the house she left me. The sold sign planted in the front yard mocked me with its bright red letters. My mother had forged my signature, sold my inheritance, and used the money to fund my brother's luxury vacation to the Maldives because, as she put it, he needed a break. She thought I was just a boring office worker who would roll over and accept it. She had no idea that for the past 5 years I have been a senior forensic accountant investigating financial fraud for the biggest corporations in America. 2 weeks later, my lawyer sent them one letter: 72 hours. Or prison. Before I tell you how I made them lose everything, hit that like button and subscribe. You will want to see how this ends. It was a Tuesday afternoon in October when my life as I knew it ceased to exist. I had taken a half-day off work to meet with a contractor at the Victorian brownstone in Beacon Hill that my grandmother Josephine had left me in her will 6 months ago. The house was my sanctuary. It was the only place in the world where I had felt loved as a child, while my parents doted on my younger brother Austin. I pulled my modest sedan up to the curb and killed the engine, expecting to see the peeling paint and the overgrown ivy I had been planning to tackle. Instead, I saw a moving truck. A massive white box truck was double parked in the narrow street blocking the driveway. Men in blue uniforms were hauling a mahogany chest of drawers down the front steps. My chest of drawers. The one Grandma kept her linens in. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I scrambled out of the car, leaving my purse on the passenger seat, and ran toward the house. "Hey," I shouted, my voice cracking. "What are you doing? Put that down. That is my property." One of the movers, a burly man with a clipboard, paused and wiped sweat from his forehead. He looked at me with bored indifference. "We have a work order, lady. House is sold. Everything inside is being cleared for the new owners." Sold. The word hung in the crisp autumn air like a guillotine blade. "That is impossible," I said, my voice trembling with a mixture of rage and panic. "I own this house. I did not sell it. Stop moving my things right now." I tried to push past him to get to the front door, but he blocked my path. "Look, I missed taking it up with the realtor. We are just doing our job." He pointed toward a silver Mercedes parked down the street. A man in a sharp blue suit was standing there, tapping on his phone. I recognized him immediately. It was Mr. Baxter, a high-end real estate agent my mother had used years ago to flip a condo. I stormed over to him, my blood boiling. Baxter looked up, his professional smile faltering for a split second before he composed himself. "Blair," he said, smooth as oil. "What a surprise. I did not expect to see you here until the final walkthrough." "What is going on?" I demanded, getting right in his face. "Why are there movers in my house? Why is there a sold sign on my lawn?" Baxter chuckled, a condescending sound that made me want to scream. "It is hardly your house anymore, Blair. The closing was finalized yesterday. The wire transfer went through this morning. The new owners, a delightful couple from New York, are eager to move in." "You sold my house?" I whispered, the shock momentarily overtaking the anger. "How? I never signed anything." Baxter sighed, opening his leather briefcase on the hood of his car. He pulled out a thick stack of documents. "Do not play this game, Blair. Your mother warned me you might get cold feet. She said you get emotional about these things." He flipped to the signature page and thrust it toward me. There, right next to the date, was my name, Blair Montgomery, written in blue ink. It looked like my signature. It had the same loops and the same slant. If I didn't know better, I would have believed I signed it. But I knew. I looked at the date next to the signature. October 12th. 3 days ago. A cold calm settled over me, replacing the panic. "October 12th, I said, pointing at the date. Baxter nodded. "Yes, the day you came into the office and signed the deed. I remember it clearly. You were wearing that lovely red scarf." I stared at him, my mind racing. He was lying. He was lying to my face, and he was doing it with the ease of someone who had done this 1,000 times. "Mr. Baxter," I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "On October 12th, I was in London. I was conducting a forensic audit on the European branch of Stark Industries. I have my passport stamps, my flight records, and about 50 witnesses, including the CFO of a Fortune 500 company, who can testify that I was on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean when this document was allegedly signed. Baxter's smile vanished. He snatched the paper back. That is ridiculous. Your mother said you were in town. She brought the notarized documents herself. She said you signed them at home because you were ill. Wait, I said. You just said I came into your office. Now you are saying my mother brought them. Which is it, Baxter? He stammered, his face turning a blotchy red. It does not matter. The documents are notarized. Your father witnessed the signature. The sale is legal. The money has been transferred to the account provided. My father witnessed it. Of course he did. My stomach churned with nausea. My own parents. They had conspired to sell the only thing that was truly mine, the only thing that gave me independence. I pulled out my phone. I am calling the police, I said. This is fraud. Baxter laughed, but it sounded nervous. Go ahead. Call them. You think the police are going to care about a family dispute? You have a history, Blair. Your mother told me about your episodes. About how you forget things, about how you get confused, gaslighting. They were already laying the groundwork to paint me as crazy. I dialed 911 anyway. I waited on the sidewalk watching the movers strip my grandmother's house bare. When the patrol car arrived 20 minutes later, 2 officers stepped out. They looked tired and uninterested. I explained the situation. I told them about the forgery, the trip to London, and the theft. Baxter showed them the paperwork. He showed them the notary stamp. He showed them the transfer receipt. It looks legal, ma'am, one officer said, handing the papers back to Baxter. This is a civil matter. If you think there was fraud, you need to get a lawyer and sue. We cannot stop a valid sale based on your word, but I can prove I was not here. I argued desperately. Show them your passport, Blair. Show them the stamps. But my passport was in my safe deposit box at the bank. I did not carry it with me. I can get it, I said. Just make them stop moving my things. We cannot do that, the officer said, getting back into his car. Take it up in court. Have a nice day. They drove away, leaving me standing on the curb while Baxter smirked. You should go home, Blair, he said, closing his briefcase. Your mother is worried about you. She said you have been working too hard. Maybe you need a vacation. A vacation. The word triggered something in my brain. Austin. My brother had been complaining for months about needing a getaway. He had just been fired from his 4th job in 2 years for incompetence, but according to my mother, he was just misunderstood. I got into my car and slammed the door. I did not go to my apartment. I drove straight to the wealthy suburb of Brookline where my parents lived. The house was a sprawling colonial mansion with manicured hedges and a fountain in the driveway. A house they could barely afford. A house they had refinanced 3 times to pay for their lifestyle and Austin's mistakes. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw it. The scene that would haunt me and fuel me for the rest of my life. There were cars everywhere. A party was in full swing. Music thumped from the backyard. I saw balloons, gold and silver balloons bobbing in the wind. I got out of my car and walked around the side of the house. The backyard was transformed. A catering tent was set up. Waiters were passing around trays of champagne. And there, in the center of it all, were my parents, Brenda and Gerald, holding court. And next to them, my brother Austin and his wife Keisha. Austin was wearing a new Rolex. I could see it glinting in the afternoon sun. Keisha was draped in a designer silk caftan, holding a glass of what looked like vintage Dom Perignon. They were laughing, toasting, celebrating. I walked right into the middle of the gathering. The guests, mostly my parents' shallow country club friends, parted like the Red Sea. They saw the look on my face. They saw the storm coming. Blair, my mother. Brenda called out when she saw me. She did not look guilty. She looked annoyed. You are late. We tried to call you, but you never picked up your phone. Grab a glass of champagne, darling. We are celebrating. Celebrating what I asked, my voice cutting through the chatter and the music. Celebrating the fact that you just committed a felony. The music stopped. Someone turned it off. The silence was sudden and heavy. Austin stepped forward with a smug grin plastered on his face. Do not be such a buzzkill, Blair. We are celebrating my new chapter. And Keisha's pregnancy announcement. We are going to the Maldives for a month, a baby moon, and then Dubai. Isn't it great, Maldives? Dubai. A month. That trip would cost at least $50,000. Probably more the way Austin spent money. And the house sold for $1.2 million. I looked at my mother. She was sipping her wine, looking at me with that familiar mix of pity and disdain. You sold my house, I said. My house, You forged my signature, and you sold my grandmother's house to pay for this. Brenda set her glass down on a passing tray. Oh, stop being so dramatic, Blair. We did not steal anything. We liquidated an asset, a dusty old money pit that you did not need. You have a job, you have that little apartment in the city, you are single. What does a single woman need with a 4-bedroom Victorian house in Beacon Hill? It is selfish of you to hoard it when your brother needs help. I needed help, I shouted. He needs a job, Mom. He does not need a vacation to the Maldives, and that house was mine. Grandma left it to me. Not to you, not to him, to me. Keisha chimed in, stepping up beside Austin and resting a hand on her stomach. She pulled out her phone and I realized she was recording me. Typically, she whispered to the camera. The jealous sister-in-law trying to ruin our moment. Guys, look at this. This is the toxicity we have to deal with. She turned the camera back to me. Blair, you should be happy for us. We are bringing a new life into the world. Austin has been so stressed. He needs this. Why are you so greedy? You have always been the greedy one. Even when we were kids, you never wanted to share your toys. Greedy. I was the one who drove a 10-year-old car. I was the one who wore suits from the outlet mall. I was the one who had been secretly paying my parents' mortgage for the last 5 years through an anonymous LLC because I knew they were drowning in debt, and I did not want them to be homeless. I had saved them over and over again, and they did not even know it. And this was how they repaid me. I looked at my father, Gerald. He was sitting in a patio chair looking at his shoes. Dad, I said, you witnessed the signature. You lied to the notary. You committed perjury. Tell them I was not there. Gerald looked up. His eyes were watery and weak. He looked at Brenda, then back at me. Blair, honey, listen to your mother. The house was a burden. The taxes and the maintenance. We did you a favor, really. And Austin is having a hard time. We needed the cash flow. The market is volatile right now. We had to act fast. You had to act fast, I repeated. So you stole $1.2 million from me. Where is the money? Is it all gone? Did you spend it all on this party and this trip? Brenda laughed. Don't be silly. $1.2 million doesn't vanish overnight. We paid off some bills. We bought Austin and Keisha a condo in the seaport. We put a deposit down on a G-Wagon for the baby. Safety first, you know. And yes, we booked the trip. The rest is invested. Invested. My mother's idea of investing was buying penny stocks she heard about on Facebook. They had blown through hundreds of thousands of dollars in 24 hours. A condo in the seaport, a G-Wagon, first-class tickets. I am going to sue you. I said, my voice steady now. I am going to sue you for everything you have. I am going to put you in jail. This is not a family dispute. This is grand larceny. Brenda walked up to me, and for a second I thought she was going to hug me. Instead, she leaned in close to her, perfume cloying and sweet. Go ahead, she whispered. Sue us. Who are they going to believe your father is a respected member of the community? I am the chair of the charity board. And you? You are the unstable daughter who had a breakdown in college, the one who has no friends, the one who works in a back office crunching numbers because she has no personality. We have the notary. We have the realtor. We have the witnesses. You have nothing, Blair. You have always had nothing. Then she pulled back and slapped me. It wasn't a hard slap, but it was shocking. It was the kind of slap meant to humiliate, not to injure. The sound echoed across the silent backyard. Get out of my house, she screamed, pointing to the gate. You ungrateful brat! We raised you. We fed you. And this is how you thank us. By trying to ruin your brother's happiness. Get out before I call the police and have you arrested for trespassing. I looked at Austin. He was smirking. He waved his fingers at me with a little bye-bye gesture. Keisha was still filming, narrating my humiliation to her 10,000 followers. My father just poured himself another drink. I did not scream back. I did not cry. I felt a cold, hard knot form in the center of my chest. It was the death of hope. The death of the little girl who just wanted her mom to love her. That girl died in that backyard amidst the balloons and the champagne. In her place, something else was born. Something colder. Something sharper. I turned around and walked out. I could hear the party starting up again behind me. I could hear my mother apologizing to the guests, telling them I was off my meds, telling them I was jealous of Austin's success. I walked to my car under the gathering storm clouds. Rain began to fall, mixing with the dust on my windshield. I sat in the driver's seat and locked the doors. My hands were not shaking anymore. I took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. They thought they had won. They thought I was powerless because they only saw the Blair they wanted to see. The mousy accountant, the doormat. They did not know Blair the forensic auditor. They did not know that for a living I hunted down men 10 times smarter and richer than them. Men who thought they could hide their theft in shell companies and offshore accounts. I tracked down billions of dollars for a living. I found the smallest discrepancies in ledgers that were thousands of pages long. I destroyed CEOs with a single spreadsheet. And my parents. My sloppy, greedy, arrogant parents. They had left a paper trail so wide a blind man could see it. They had forged a signature on a date I was out of the country. They had transferred funds to accounts I could trace in my sleep. They had committed tax evasion, wire fraud, and identity theft. And they had done it all while underestimating the one person who could catch them. I picked up my phone. I did not call the police. Not yet. The police were a blunt instrument and I needed a scalpel. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I needed. Harrison. Harrison was not just a lawyer. He was a shark. We had worked together on the Enron-style collapse of a tech giant last year. He cost $1,000 an hour, and he was worth every penny. He answered on the second ring. Blair said, his voice gravelly and sharp. I thought you were taking a personal day. I was, I said, staring at the rain running down the glass. Harrison, I need to activate a retainer. Personal matter. What kind of matter, he asked. Asset recovery, I said, and criminal prosecution. It involves wire fraud, forgery, and theft of a trust fund asset. How much are we talking about? 1.2 million liquid, I said, plus the value of the property. But Harrison, it is not about the money. It never is, he said. Who is the target? My mother, I said, and my father, and my brother. I want to execute the nuclear option. I want them to lose the house, the cars, and the accounts. Everything. I want them destitute. Harrison paused. Family cases are messy, Blair. Are you sure you want to go there? Once we pull this trigger, there is no going back. I looked at the house one last time. I saw the lights in the windows. I saw the shadows of the people dancing. They were dancing on my grave. I am sure, I said. Send them the letter. Give them 72 hours. If the money and the deed are not back in my name by Friday at 5 p.m., we file federal charges. Done, Harrison said. I will have the courier there within the hour. Do you have the evidence? I have everything, I said. I am heading to the office now. I am going to pull their tax returns, their bank statements, and their credit reports. I am going to build a forensic map of their entire financial life. And Harrison? Yes. Make sure you copy Austin on the email. He is in the Maldives. I want him to read it while he is sipping his cocktails. Consider it done. I hung up the phone and started the car. The rain was coming down harder now, washing away the dust, washing away the past. I drove away from the mansion, from the family that had betrayed me, from the life I had tried so hard to maintain. I drove toward the city, toward my office, toward the 3 monitors and the high-speed server that were my real weapons. They wanted a war. They wanted to treat me like an enemy. Fine. I would show them what an enemy looked like. I arrived at my office building at 7 p.m. The security guard nodded at me as I swiped my badge. The office was dark and quiet. I liked it that way. I sat down at my desk and booted up my system. The blue light of the screens illuminated my face. I logged into the secure database. I pulled up the public records for the sale of my house. I found the notary's name. I found the bank that handled the transfer. Then I went deeper. I used my credentials to access the credit bureaus. I pulled my parents' credit reports. They were overextended, heavily. The mortgage on their mansion was underwater. They had 3 maxed-out credit cards. They had a home equity line of credit that was tapped out. They were broke. That is why they stole the house. They were desperate. The facade of wealth was just that. And Austin. I pulled his file. It was even worse. Student loans in default. A car repossession last year. Gambling debts to an online casino based in Malta. I smiled. It was a cold, humorless smile. They were not just criminals. They were incompetent criminals. They had built a house of cards, and they had just handed me the match. I started typing. I began compiling the dossier. Exhibit A, the flight records proving I was in London. Exhibit B, the passport stamps. Exhibit C, the handwriting analysis of the forged signature, which I did myself using our internal software. Exhibit D, the wire transfer records showing the money going from the sale into my mother's account and then immediately out to the travel agency, the car dealership, and the condo developer. It was a trail of breadcrumbs that led straight to prison. I worked through the night. I did not sleep. I did not eat. I just typed and clicked and compiled. By the time the sun came up over the Boston skyline, I had a 300-page document. It was a masterpiece of forensic accounting. It was a death warrant for their social standing and their freedom. At 8 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was an email notification from Harrison. Subject: notice of intent to sue and demand for restitution. Sent to Brenda Montgomery. Gerald Montgomery, Austin Montgomery. Status delivered. The timer had started. 72 hours. I leaned back in my chair and watched the sunrise. I wondered what they were doing right now. Probably sleeping off the champagne. Probably dreaming of their luxury vacation. They had no idea that their world had already ended. The clock was ticking, and I was the one holding the stopwatch. I stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the city waking up. I felt a strange sense of calm. The pain was still there, buried deep under the anger, but it was manageable now. It was fuel. My mother said I was a disappointment. She said I had no ambition. She was about to find out just how ambitious I could be when I wanted something. And right now, what I wanted was justice. I went to the break room and made a pot of coffee. I poured a cup and took a sip. It was bitter and hot, just like the revenge I was about to serve. I walked back to my desk and opened a new file. This one was labeled IRS Referral. If they thought the lawsuit was bad, wait until they met the tax man. Al Capone went down for taxes. My parents would too. I was just getting started. The contrast between my reality and theirs was sharp enough to cut glass. While I sat in a temperature-controlled server room in downtown Boston, illuminated only by the cold blue glow of 3 high-definition monitors, my brother Austin and his wife Keisha were touching down in paradise. I had cloned Austin's phone days ago, a simple trick when you know the iCloud password he has used since high school, which was the name of his first dog, followed by the year he was born. It meant I could see everything, every photo, every text, every transaction. And what I saw made my blood run cold and then boil over. They had arrived in the Maldives via a private seaplane charter. The footage from Keisha's Instagram story showed the turquoise water stretching out like a sheet of endless glass beneath the pontoons of the aircraft. She was squealing with delight, the camera panning from the pristine white sandbars to the bottle of Krug champagne, resting in a silver bucket next to Austin's knees. He looked like a king returning to his kingdom. He was wearing linen pants and a shirt unbuttoned halfway down his chest, sunglasses reflecting the tropical sun. He raised his glass to the camera and winked. "To the good life, baby," he said. "To getting what we deserve. What they deserved." They had burned through $20,000 just on the flights. That was money my grandmother had saved for decades, putting away pennies from her sewing business. Money she meant for me to use for a down payment or a wedding or a rainy day. Austin was drinking it in a single gulp. The video cut to their arrival at the resort. It was not just any resort. It was the Conrad Rangali Island. And they were not staying in a beach villa. They had booked the Maraca, the world's first underwater hotel residence. I watched on my center monitor as the butler opened the door to their suite. It was a 2-story architectural marvel floating above the Indian Ocean, with a master bedroom submerged 16 feet below sea level. Keisha's voice narrated the tour, her tone dripping with a faux humble brag that made my teeth ache. "You guys, look at this," she cooed, pointing the camera at the spiral staircase. "We are literally sleeping with the sharks tonight. Austin deserves this so much. He has been working so hard on his mental health, and we just needed to escape the negativity back home." Negativity. That was me. I was the negativity. I was the sister who had the audacity to demand they not steal a $1.2 million property. I looked away from the live stream and focused on my left monitor. The environment in my office could not have been more different. It was silent save for the hum of the cooling fans. My desk was a fortress of solitude. I took a sip of lukewarm black coffee, my third cup since 5 p.m. It was now 2 in the morning in Boston. My eyes burned, but my mind was razor sharp. I logged into the bank's back-end system. I was not just Blair the sister. I was Blair Montgomery, senior forensic auditor for a firm that scared the life out of Wall Street executives. My clearance level allowed me to see things others could not. I typed in my parents' social security numbers, then Austin's, then Keisha's. The digital footprint they left behind was glowing neon red. Amateur. That was the only word for it. They thought that because they had moved the money from the house sale into 3 different accounts, they were being clever. They thought that layering the funds would hide the source, but to a forensic accountant, they were basically drawing a map to their own prison cell. I traced the wire transfer from the house sale. $1.2 million deposited on October 12th into a joint account held by Brenda and Gerald Montgomery at First Republic. Then the bleeding began. On October 13th, a transfer of $400,000 to a Shell LLC registered in Delaware. I pulled the articles of incorporation for the LLC. It took me 30 seconds to find the registered agent. It was Austin. He had named the company A&K Future Holdings. Subtitle: Austin and Keisha. He had literally put his initials on the getaway car. From that LLC, the money was moving fast. $50,000 to the travel agency for the Maldives trip. $80,000 to a luxury car dealership in Boston for a G-Wagon that was currently sitting on a wait list. $10,000 to a jewelry store. But that wasn't the crime. Spending stolen money is just theft. What I found next was the federal offense, the kind that puts you in a federal penitentiary for 5 to 10 years. I looked at the transaction history for my parents' account. They had withdrawn $9,900 in cash. Then the next day, another $9,900. Then the next day, the same amount. They had done this 10 times in 2 weeks. Structuring, also known as smurfing. It is the act of breaking down large cash transactions into smaller amounts to avoid the $10,000 reporting threshold required by the Bank Secrecy Act. They were trying to hide the cash withdrawals from the IRS. They were trying to avoid the currency transaction report. I leaned back in my chair and laughed. A dry, humorless sound in the empty office. My father, the man who always lectured me about doing things the right way, the man who prided himself on his reputation, had just committed a textbook financial crime. And he had done it so clumsily that a first-year accounting student would have flagged it. I saved the transaction logs. I exported the PDF files. I was building a dossier that would be bulletproof. Back on the center screen, a notification popped up. Keisha was live. I clicked the link. The video feed filled the screen. They were at dinner now. The camera was set up on the table facing them. Behind them, through the curved glass walls of the underwater restaurant, schools of tropical fish darted through the blue water. The lighting was dim and romantic. The table was laden with seafood towers and crystal decanters. Keisha was glowing. She had changed into a shimmering silver dress that caught the light. Austin was wearing a white dinner jacket, looking like a budget version of James Bond. They were both slightly drunk, their eyes glassy and bright. "Hey guys," Keisha said to the camera, waving a lobster claw. "We are just having a little midnight snack here in paradise. I wanted to hop on and do a quick Q&A because my DMs are blowing up. Everyone is asking how we afforded this trip." Austin leaned in, wrapping an arm around her shoulder. "Tell them, baby. Tell them it is about manifesting." Keisha nodded vigorously. "Exactly. It is about mindset. We manifested this abundance. We put it out into the universe that we deserved a higher level of living, and the universe provided. And also, family support is so important. We are so blessed to have parents who understand our vision." I typed a command into my terminal, pulling up the tax records for the house they had sold. Capital gains tax. They hadn't withheld a dime. They were going to owe the IRS roughly $200,000 in taxes on the sale, and they were spending the principal. Keisha glanced at the comments scrolling on her phone screen. "Oh, I see a question here. Someone is asking about the haters." "Yeah, we have haters. Specifically one hater." Austin scoffed while taking a swig of wine. "My sister, she is..." "Look, I love her, but she is a very unhappy person. She has always been jealous. She sees us living our best lives and she cannot handle it. She is stuck in her little cubicle crunching numbers, living a small life. She wanted to hoard our grandmother's house just to keep it empty. Just to have it. Who does that?" Keisha made a sad face, pouting her lips. "It is really sad, honestly. We tried to include her. We tried to share the blessing, but she called the police on our parents. Can you imagine calling the cops on your own mom and dad because they liquidated an asset to help the family? It is a mental illness, you guys. We are praying for her." Mental illness. I felt a vein throb in my temple. They were painting me as the villain to thousands of strangers. They were using my stolen inheritance to buy caviar and champagne, and then using the platform that money bought them to destroy my reputation. I looked at the number of viewers. 3,000 people watching. 3,000 people listening to them call me crazy and jealous. Austin laughed again. "But hey, let her sit in the rain in Boston. We are swimming with manta rays tomorrow. The best revenge is living well, right?" "Right, babe," Keisha chirped. "Cheers to that." They clinked their glasses. The sound was crisp and clear over the speakers. I minimized the video window. I did not turn it off. I wanted their voices in the background. I wanted their laughter to be the soundtrack to their destruction. I pulled up the IRS whistleblower portal. Form 211. Application for Award for Original Information. I began to fill it out. Name of taxpayer Brenda and Gerald Montgomery. Social security numbers entered. Description of violation: unreported income from real estate transaction. Structuring of cash withdrawals to evade reporting requirements. Wire fraud. I attached the files, the bank statements showing the structuring, the wire transfers to the LLC, the lack of tax withholding. Then I opened a second tab. The FBI Internet Crime Complaint Center, nature of crime: real estate fraud, identity theft, forgery. I typed in the narrative. I detailed the dates I was in London. I attached the flight manifests I had pulled from the airline database. I attached the sworn affidavit from my boss stating I was physically in the UK office on the day the deed was signed. I looked at the screen. 2 buttons, 2 clicks, and their lives would be over. It would not happen tonight. Bureaucracy takes time. But the wheels would start turning. The audits would be triggered. The flags would be raised. But I needed something faster. I needed something that would hit them while they were still in that underwater room feeling invincible. I looked at the bank accounts again. The money for the trip, the $50,000 they were currently spending, was on a debit card linked to the LLC account. Austin had been sloppy. He had linked his personal email to the account for alerts. I cracked the LLC's bank login in 10 minutes. Austin used the same password for everything. Football 123. It was pathetic. I logged in. Balance $140,000. Pending transactions. Conrad Rangali Island, $15,000. I went to the Settings tab. I found the option for lost or stolen cards. I hovered my mouse over the button. In the background, I heard Keisha say, "We are going to order another bottle." Why not? We are rich. I clicked the button. Are you sure you want to report this card as stolen? This action cannot be undone. The card will be immediately deactivated. I clicked yes. On the screen, a green checkmark appeared. Card deactivated. A replacement will be mailed to the address on file in 7 to 10 business days. I smiled. The address on file was the condo in Boston. The condo they had not moved into yet. I went a step further. I flagged the account for suspicious activity. I marked the transactions in the Maldives as fraudulent. Reason cardholder is in Boston. Transactions are originating from the Indian Ocean. The bank's algorithm would lock the account down tighter than Fort Knox. It would take a personal visit to a branch to unlock it, and the nearest branch was 10,000 miles away. I switched back to the live stream. Austin was waving at a waiter. "Garçon, another bottle of the crystal, please, and bring the dessert menu. We want everything." The waiter nodded and walked away. I watched. I waited. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The waiter returned with a card reader. "Sir," the waiter said, his voice was faint but audible. "There seems to be a problem with your card." It was declined. Austin frowned. "That is impossible. Run it again. It has 100 grand on it." The waiter ran it again. Beep. Declined. "Try this one," Austin said, pulling out a second card. That was his personal card. I knew that one too. It was maxed out. I had checked his credit report an hour ago. Beep. Declined. Keisha stopped smiling. Her phone camera wobbled. "Babe, what is going on?" she hissed. "I do not know." Austin snapped, his voice rising. "Call the bank. I have no service down here," Keisha said. The waiter was looking uncomfortable. "Sir, the bill is currently $3,000. We need a valid form of payment." "Do you know who I am?" Austin shouted, standing up. "I am staying in Morocco. I am good for it. Call the manager." I leaned closer to the screen. The facade was cracking. The panic was setting in. "This is ridiculous," Austin yelled. "My sister. It must be my sister. She did something." Keisha turned the camera to herself. Her eyes were wide and fearful. "Guys, something is wrong. The bank is messing up. We have to go." She ended the live stream abruptly. The screen went black. I sat back in my chair and took a deep breath. The silence in the office felt different now. It was not empty. It was heavy with anticipation. They were stuck underwater with a $3,000 bill and no way to pay it. They were 10,000 miles from home with no access to cash. And in about 48 hours, when the wire transfers for the hotel room bounced, they would be kicked out onto the street. But I wasn't done. That was just the appetizer. I looked at the clock. 3 a.m. Harrison would be up in a few hours. I drafted an email to him. Subject: Phase 1 complete. Body. The accounts are frozen. The evidence is compiled. The IRS and FBI complaints are drafted and ready to file. Send the letter. Give them 72 hours. Let them sweat in paradise. I attached the 300-page dossier. I hit send. Then I closed my laptop. I stood up and walked out of the office. The security guard was sleeping at his desk in the lobby. I walked out into the cool Boston rain. I did not have $1 million. I did not have a house in Beacon Hill anymore. But as I walked to my car, I felt richer than I ever had in my life. I had the truth. I had the law. And I had the patience of a predator who knows the trap has already snapped shut. They wanted a vacation. I just gave them one they would never forget. 3 days. 72 hours. That was all the time they had left before their world burned to the ground. And I was going to enjoy watching every second of the fire. I started my car and drove home ready to finally get some sleep. The nightmare was over for me. For them, it was just beginning. The sun had barely risen over the Boston skyline when Harrison, my attorney, sat in his corner office overlooking the harbor. He was a man who did not believe in half measures. On his mahogany desk sat a single envelope made of heavy cream-colored bonded paper. It was thick. It was ominous. And it was about to ruin my mother's lunch. Harrison picked up his fountain pen and signed the bottom of the cover letter with a flourish. The ink was black as pitch. He pressed a seal onto the document. This was not a friendly warning. This was a declaration of war. He buzzed his assistant. "Send the courier," he said, "and make sure he is the one who enjoys making a scene." 30 minutes later, a black motorcycle courier was weaving through traffic heading toward the suburbs. At the same time, Harrison hit send on an encrypted email. The recipient was Austin Montgomery, currently located at the Conrad Rangali Island, Maldives. The subject line was simple: urgent legal notice, federal indictment pending. I was not there to see it happen, but Harrison had arranged for a process server who wore a body camera. I watched the footage later. It was better than any movie. My mother Brenda was holding court at the Emerald Hills Country Club. It was a Tuesday, which meant it was ladies' lunch. She was sitting at the best table on the patio overlooking the 18th hole, wearing a white tennis outfit, even though she had not played tennis since the 90s. She was surrounded by her sycophantic women who tolerated her arrogance because they enjoyed her gossip. Brenda was in fine form. She was holding a glass of gin and tonic, the ice clinking softly as she gestured. "You should have seen poor Blair," she was saying, her voice carrying across the patio. She was absolutely hysterical, just screaming at her own brother. I had to ask her to leave for her own good. It is so hard when children are unstable. We try to help, but some people just want to be miserable. Her friends nodded sympathetically, pecking at their salads. "You are a saint, Brenda," one of them cooed. "Most mothers would have cut her off years ago." "I know," Brenda sighed dramatically. "But what can I do? A mother loves her children, even the broken ones." Anyway, Austin is having a marvelous time. He sent me a picture of the underwater bedroom. It is costing a fortune, of course, but Gerald and I were happy to provide it. He deserves a little luxury after everything he has been through. Just as she took a sip of her drink, a man walked onto the patio. He was not wearing golf attire. He was wearing a cheap polyester suit that was slightly too tight across the shoulders and heavy boots that clunked on the flagstones. He looked like a storm cloud in a field of daisies. The maitre d' tried to stop him, but the man flashed a badge and kept walking. He scanned the tables, his eyes landing on my mother. He marched straight over, ignoring the gasps of the women around him. Brenda Montgomery barked. My mother froze the glass halfway to her mouth. She looked him up and down, her lip curling in disgust. "Excuse me. Who let you in here? We are in the middle of lunch." "Are you Brenda Montgomery?" the man repeated, louder this time. Heads turned at nearby tables. The chatter died down. "Yes, I am," she snapped. "Now if you do not leave immediately, I will have security throw you out." The man reached into his jacket and pulled out the thick cream-colored envelope. He slapped it onto the table right in the middle of the Caesar salads. "You have been served," he said. My mother laughed with a high-pitched, nervous sound. "Served with what? A parking ticket. Do not be ridiculous. It is a formal notice of intent to litigate the man, said his voice devoid of emotion, along with a demand for restitution regarding the theft of assets from the estate of Josephine Miller. You have 72 hours, ma'am. I suggest you read it before you finish that drink. He turned on his heel and walked away, leaving a vacuum of silence in his wake. My mother stared at the envelope. Her name was typed on the front in bold, severe letters. Her friends were staring at her, their forks suspended in midair. "Open it, Brenda," one of them whispered. "What is it?" "It is nothing," my mother said, her hand trembling slightly as she reached for it. "Just some nonsense from my daughter. She is trying to scare me." She tore open the envelope. She did not use a letter opener. She ripped it with her manicured nails. She pulled out the document. It was 5 pages long, stapled in the corner. The letterhead at the top, embossed in gold, read, "Harrison and Partners." Beneath it were the words that would haunt her nightmares. "Notice of violation of irrevocable trust and commission of federal wire fraud." She began to read. Her eyes darted back and forth, scanning the legal jargon. I knew exactly what it said because I had helped draft it. "Dear Mrs. Montgomery, we represent Blair Montgomery, the sole beneficiary of the Josephine Miller Irrevocable Trust. It has come to our attention that on October 12th, you facilitated the fraudulent sale of the property located at 44 Beacon Street. This property was held in trust and could not be sold without the express written consent of the beneficiary and the trustee. Furthermore, the signature on the deed of sale has been identified by forensic handwriting analysis as a forgery. The letter went on. It detailed the wire transfers. It listed the accounts where the money had been sent. It cited the specific federal statutes she had violated, including Title 18 United States Code Section 1443 regarding wire fraud, which carries a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison. Then came the ultimatum. The paragraph Harrison and I had polished until it shone like a blade. You have 72 hours from the receipt of this notice to return the full sum of $1,200,000 to the trust account listed below and to vacate any claim to the property. Failure to comply will result in the immediate filing of criminal charges with the Federal Bureau of Investigation and a referral to the Internal Revenue Service for tax evasion. The clock starts now. My mother read it twice. Her face went from pale to red. She looked up and saw her friends watching her. She saw the waiters whispering. She felt the weight of their judgment. And then she laughed. It was a loud, forced sound. "Can you believe this?" she said, looking around the table. "My daughter thinks she can sue me." She hired some ambulance chaser to write up a scary letter. One of her friends leaned in to look at the letterhead. Harrison and Partners. Brenda is a very expensive firm. They handled the divorce for the senator last year. They are not ambulance chasers. My mother scoffed. "Please. Blair makes $50,000 a year. She lives in a shoebox. She cannot afford a lawyer like this. She probably downloaded the letterhead from the internet. It is a fake." She stood up, holding the letter like it was a piece of trash. "She thinks she can threaten me. She thinks she can ruin my reputation. Well, I have news for her. I am her mother. I brought her into this world and I can take her out of it." She ripped the letter in half, then she ripped it again. She dropped the pieces onto her half-eaten salad. "It is a bluff," she declared loud enough for the whole patio to hear. "She wants attention, that is all. She is jealous of her brother, so she cooks up this fantasy about trusts and fraud. Josephine left that house to the family. I am the executor. I can do whatever I want with it." She sat back down and picked up her gin. "Waiter," she called out, snapping her fingers. "Another round for the table. And take this trash away." She gestured to the torn paper. Her friends exchanged glances. They were not convinced. They smelled blood in the water. But they smiled their tight smiles and drank their drinks because the show was just getting started. My mother thought she had won. She thought by tearing up the paper she had made the problem disappear. She leaned into her friend on the left and lowered her voice. But the courier's body camera, which he had left running on a nearby planter while he pretended to tie his shoe, caught every word. Besides, she whispered the money was gone. I moved it to an offshore account Gerald set up years ago. Even if she says she will never find it, and she certainly can't get it back in 72 hours. Let her try. She took a long swallow of her drink, satisfied with her own cleverness. She had no idea that by admitting she had moved the money offshore, she had just confessed to money laundering. And she had done it on tape. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, Austin was having a very different reaction. He was standing in the lobby of the Conrad Rangali Island, dripping wet. He had just come back from a jet ski excursion, only to find his keycard did not work. He had marched to the front desk, demanding to speak to the manager. While he was waiting, his phone pinged. He pulled it out of his waterproof pouch. It was the email from Harrison. Austin squinted at the screen, water dripping from his nose onto the glass. He read the subject line, "Federal indictment pending." He opened the attachment. It was the same letter my mother had received, but with a special addendum addressed specifically to him. Mr. Montgomery, we have evidence that you knowingly received and spent funds obtained through fraud. The purchase of the condominium in the Seaport District has been flagged. The deposit on the Mercedes G-Wagon has been frozen. Your travel expenses are being tracked as evidence of dissipation of stolen assets. You are hereby notified that you are a person of interest in a federal investigation. We advise you to return to the United States immediately to surrender your passport. Austin stared at the phone. His tan face turned a sickly shade of gray. He looked around the lobby. The luxury that had seemed so solid an hour ago now looked like a stage set about to collapse. Keisha walked up to him, wrapping a towel around her waist. "Babe, what is taking so long? I want to order room service." Austin shoved the phone at her. "Read this." Keisha read it. Her eyes went wide. "Is this real?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Did your sister really call the FBI?" "It is a bluff," Austin said, but his voice cracked. "It has to be. Mom said she handled it. Mom said the house was hers to sell, but it says here," Keisha pointed at the screen. "It says, irrevocable trust." "Austin, I Googled that. It means Mom could not touch it. It means she stole it. And we spent it." "Shut up," Austin hissed, grabbing the phone back. "Do not use that word. We did not steal anything. It was a gift. Mom gave us a gift." "Sir," Austin jumped. The hotel manager was standing behind him. He was a tall man with an impeccable suit and a face that brooked no nonsense. "There seems to be an issue with the payment method on file," the manager said quietly. "The card has been reported stolen." "Reported stolen," Austin repeated. "No, that is a mistake. My sister is messing with me. Run it again." "We have run it, sir. The bank has flagged the account for fraud. We cannot process any further charges, and the pre-authorization for your stay has been reversed." Austin felt the floor tilting beneath him. "Reversed? You mean we haven't paid?" "Currently, sir, you have an outstanding balance of $45,000, including the private seaplane transfer and the champagne from last night. We will need an alternative form of payment immediately." Austin looked at Keisha. Keisha looked at her feet. I need to make a call," Austin stammered. "I need to call my mother. Please do as the manager said, crossing his arms. But until the balance is settled, I am afraid we have locked your suite. Your luggage will be held in storage." "Locked our suite!" Keisha shrieked. "But my makeup is there. My chargers." "I am sorry, madam." "Policy." Austin dialed my mother. It went straight to voicemail. She was still on the patio holding court, laughing at my expense. He dialed my father. Voicemail. He dialed me. I watched the call come in on my screen. Unknown number. I knew it was him. I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. Then I declined it. I sent a text instead. Read the email, Austin. You have 71 hours left. I could imagine him standing there in the lobby, wet and shivering, realizing that the golden boy had finally run out of luck. He typed back furiously, "You are crazy, Blair. When I get home, I am going to kill you. You froze my cards. You stranded us. Fix this now, or I swear to God." I didn't reply. I just forwarded the text to Harrison, adding a threat of violence to the file. That would help with the restraining order later. Back at the golf club, Brenda was finishing her lunch. She felt good. She felt powerful. She had torn up the letter, she had silenced the doubts. She was Brenda Montgomery and nothing could touch her. She paid the bill with her platinum card. She tipped the waiter lavishly, trying to buy back her dignity after the scene with the courier. She walked out to the parking lot, her head held high. She got into her leased BMW and started the engine. She checked her phone. 5 missed calls from Austin. She frowned. Why was he calling so much? Probably just to thank her again for the trip. She decided to call him back on the drive home. "Hey, sweetie," she said when he answered. "How is paradise, Mom?" Austin screamed into the phone. His voice was distorted by panic and poor reception. "Mom, the police are here. The hotel called the police. My card is declined. They locked us out of the room. Mom, they say the money is stolen." Brenda swerved slightly, nearly hitting a mailbox. "Calm down, Austin. What are you talking about, stolen? Who said that?" "The bank," Austin yelled. "And Blair. She sent me a letter to Mom. A lawyer sent it. It says you forged the deed. It says you stole a trust fund. Mom, is it true? Did you steal the house?" Brenda felt a cold sweat break out on her forehead. "Do not use that word," she hissed. "I did not steal. I managed family assets. Blair is just trying to cause trouble. I told you she is unstable." "Unstable." Austin laughed, a hysterical broken sound. "Mom." She froze the accounts. "She knows about the LLC. She knows about the car. She knows everything. She gave us 72 hours. "It is a bluff," Brenda said, gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. "She does not have the power to do that. She is a nobody. She is a forensic accountant," Mom, Austin shouted. I looked her up. I looked up at her firm. "She hunts people like us for a living. She is not a secretary. She is a partner." "Mom, we are in trouble. Real trouble." Brenda pulled the car over to the side of the road. Her heart was hammering in her chest. Partner. Forensic accountant. No, that was impossible. Blair was the quiet one, the slow one, the one who liked math because she couldn't handle people. She wasn't dangerous. Was she? Mom, Austin said, his voice dropping to a whimper. "They are threatening to arrest me. In the Maldives. Do you know what the prisons are like here? You have to fix this. Send money. Wire it to the hotel. Now." I can't," Brenda whispered. "What do you mean you can't?" "The offshore account," Brenda said. "It takes days to clear. It is a weekend. The banks are closed." "Days," Austin screamed. "We don't have days. We have hours." "I will figure something out," Brenda said, trying to sound confident, but her voice wavered. "Just sit tight. Tell them it is a mistake. I will call Gerald. We will fix this." She hung up the phone. She sat in the silence of her luxury car. The leather seats felt cold. The air conditioning felt like a tomb. 72 hours. She looked at the clock on the dashboard. 1 hour had already passed. She dialed my father. "Gerald," she said when he answered. "We have a problem. A big problem." Gerald asked, his voice slurred. "He had started drinking at noon," Blair, Brenda said. She knows everything, and she has a lawyer." "So what?" Gerald said. "Let her sue. We will drag it out for years. We will be dead before she sees a dime." "No," Gerald, Brenda said. "She isn't just suing. She went to the feds. Austin is stranded. His cards are frozen. Gerald, she is not playing games." There was silence on the other end. Then the sound of a glass shattering. "The feds," Gerald whispered. "Yes," Brenda said. "The feds." Brenda looked out the window at the manicured lawns of her neighborhood. The perfect houses, the perfect life. It was all about to shatter just like Gerald's glass. She realized then, with a dawning horror, that she had made a fatal miscalculation. She had pushed the one person who knew where all the bodies were buried, and now that person was coming for her with a shovel. She started the car again. She needed to get home. She needed to shred documents. She needed to hide the laptop. But deep down, she knew it was too late. The letter on the table at the country club was not a warning. It was a notification of execution. And the executioner was her own daughter. 71 hours left. The phone on my desk vibrated so hard it rattled the empty coffee cups scattered around my keyboard. I did not need to look at the caller ID to know who it was. The digital timestamp on the email server showed that Austin had opened the attachment exactly 3 minutes ago. I adjusted my headset and accepted the call. I did not say hello. I just waited. "Blair, you miserable witch." Austin's voice was distorted by rage and a bad cellular connection, but the venom was crystal clear. I could hear the wind in the background, the sound of the ocean that he thought insulated him from consequence. I leaned back in my ergonomic chair, my eyes scanning the 3 monitors in front of me. On the left screen, I had his credit report open. On the right, the live transaction log of the LLC bank account. In the center, a command prompt blinking a steady green cursor, waiting for my input. "Hello, Austin?" I said. My voice was flat and professional. "I assume you received the correspondence from Mr. Harrison." "Correspondence," Austin shouted. "You sent me a threat. You are threatening me with the FBI, Blair. Do you have any idea how insane you sound? You are ruining my vacation. Keisha is crying in the bathroom because she thinks we are going to jail." "You are going to jail, Austin," I said calmly. "That is not a threat. That is a probability calculation based on the amount of evidence I have currently compiling on my hard drive. Wire fraud is a serious offense. Spending stolen funds across state lines and international borders makes it a federal case." Austin laughed. It was a jagged, manic sound. "You really think you are something, don't you? You sit there in your little gray cubicle playing detective. You have always been jealous of Blair. Jealous that Mom and Dad loved me more. Jealous that I know how to live and you just know how to exist." He was projecting. I knew that. But he was also revealing his hand. He truly believed he was untouchable. He believed the narrative my mother had spun for 30 years, that he was special, that the rules did not apply to him, and that someone would always be there to clean up his mess. "You think you can touch me," he sneered. "I am in the Maldives, Blair. I am in paradise. There is no extradition treaty for family disputes. I have the money. Mom put it in an account you cannot touch. We are going to stay here until you calm down and realize how stupid you are being." I looked at the transaction log on the right screen. He was at the underwater restaurant again, Etha. I could see the pre-authorization hold for the dinner. $500 per person, plus a bottle of Louis Roederer Cristal. $2,000. He was drinking my grandmother's legacy while screaming at me. "You are not in paradise, Austin," I said. "You are at a crime scene. And that money you think is safe. It is in a Cayman Islands shell account, routed through a correspondent bank in New York. Which means it is subject to the Patriot Act. Which means I can freeze it." "You are bluffing," he yelled. "You are just a bitter, lonely accountant. You do not have that kind of power. If you did, you wouldn't be driving a Honda and living in a rental. I am the one with the vision, Blair. I am the one with the future. You are just the bankroll." And guess what? The bank is closed. He was right about one thing. The bank was closed. But not in the way he thought. I looked at the center screen. I had already prepared the command. It was a fraud alert protocol. As the forensic auditor on record for the family trust which I had established legally, the moment I realized the forgery, I had the authority to flag any suspicious activity. The system was waiting for one keystroke. "Come and get me." Austin taunted, his voice dripping with arrogance. Come fly over here and try to serve me with papers. I will be on a yacht. I will be getting a massage. I will be living the life you were too scared to claim. You can't touch me, Blair. I am untouchable. I watched the cursor blink, blink, blink. He really thought he had won. He thought the distance mattered. He thought luxury protected him. He did not understand that in the modern world, money is just data. And I was the administrator. Are you done, Austin? I asked. No, I am not done, he screamed. When I get back, I am going to sue you for harassment. I am going to take whatever is left of your pathetic savings. I am going to make sure you never work in this town again. Mom knows people. Dad knows people. You are going to regret the day you tried to cross us. I looked at the time. It was dinner service in the Maldives. The waiter would be bringing the check any minute now. Austin, I said, my voice dropping an octave. I want you to look around. Look at the fish. Look at the wine. Look at your wife. What are you talking about? He demanded. I want you to really savor it, I said. Because you are right about one thing. You are living a life I would never choose. A life built on theft and lies. But it ends now. You are crazy, he muttered. Enjoy it, Austin, I said. Enjoy the champagne. Enjoy the view. Because that is the last supper you will ever eat as a free man. I reached out with my index finger and hit the enter key. On my screen, a cascade of code scrolled down rapidly. Status update, fraud alert, confirmed. Action freeze, all associated assets. Target, Austin Montgomery, Keisha Montgomery, A&K Future Holdings, Scope Global, execution immediate. There was silence on the phone line. Then I heard Austin scoff. You are so dramatic. Nothing happened. I am still here. The waiter is bringing the bill right now. I am going to pay for it with the money you think you froze, and then I am going to order another bottle just to spite you. I did not hang up. I wanted to hear this. I needed to hear this. I heard the muffled sound of the phone being put down on a table. I heard the clink of silverware. I heard Keisha's voice in the background, shrill and anxious. Did you tell her off, babe? Did you tell her we aren't scared? Yeah, I told her. Austin said, his voice was distant but audible. She thinks she can freeze our accounts. She is delusional. Then I heard footsteps. The waiter. Good evening, sir, the waiter said. I hope you enjoyed your meal. It was excellent, Austin said, his voice regaining that pompous edge. Put it on the card on file. The black card. Certainly, sir. There was a pause. The hum of the underwater currents. The sound of my own breathing in the dark office. Then the sound of a machine beeping. A harsh, dissonant tone. Sir, the waiter said. The card was declined. Austin laughed. Try it again. It is a chip error. It happens. I heard the beep again. Declined, sir. The machine says to refer to the issuer. Pickup card. Pickup card. That was the kill code. It meant the bank had instructed the merchant to confiscate the physical card because it was flagged for severe fraud. What do you mean, pickup card? Austin demanded, his voice rising. That is a mistake. Here, use the other one, the Visa. I listened. I imagined him fumbling for his wallet, his hands starting to sweat. Beep. Declined, sir. This one also says pickup card. That is impossible, Austin shouted. I have $100,000 in that account. Call your manager. This machine is broken. Sir, the waiter said, his tone was hardening. We have tried 3 different terminals. The cards are blocked. All of them. Keisha's voice cut in panic, rising in her throat. Austin, what is going on? Why are the cards not working? I do not know, Austin yelled. It is Blair. She did something. I leaned into my microphone. I knew he could not hear me when the phone was on the table, but it felt good to say it anyway. I told you, Austin. The bank is closed. Sir, the waiter said, and now I could hear the presence of others, probably security. The bill is $2,400. We need a valid form of payment immediately. I need to make a call, Austin stammered. Let me call my bank. I watched on my screen as a notification popped up. Incoming call rejected. Reason number flagged for fraud investigation. His phone would not work for outgoing calls to the bank. I had flagged his number as compromised. He could call me, he could call his parents, but he could not call the fraud department. Mom, Austin yelled, "I need to call Mom." I heard the fumbling of the phone. Then the line went dead. He had hung up to call our mother. I sat back and exhaled. The adrenaline was coursing through my veins like ice water. I pulled up the log for my parents' accounts. Brenda Montgomery, Gerald Montgomery, status frozen, reason IRS audit flag, structuring. Austin was calling a woman who currently had zero access to her own money. He was calling for a lifeline that had been cut. I turned to my second monitor. I opened the email client. I composed a new message to the hotel concierge at the Conrad Rangali Island. To General Manager, from Blair Montgomery Senior Auditor. Subject fraudulent activity. Guest Austin Montgomery. Dear Sir, please be advised that the credit cards used to book the stay for Mr. Austin Montgomery and Ms. Keisha Montgomery have been flagged for federal wire fraud in the United States. The funds used for the deposit are subject to immediate clawback by the victim's trust. I have attached the federal notification of asset freezing. It is my understanding that the guests currently have no valid means of payment. I suggest you take appropriate measures to secure your property. Sincerely, Blair Montgomery. I hit send. That was the nail in the coffin. Not only were they broken, they were now marked as international criminals in a 5-star resort. They would be locked out of their room. Their luggage would be confiscated. They would be escorted off the premises by local police. And they had no way home. The return tickets were booked on the same card. The airline would cancel them automatically within the hour once the payment chargeback hit. They were stranded in the middle of the Indian Ocean with nothing but the clothes on their backs and a bill they could not pay. I looked at the photo of my grandmother on my desk. She looked stern but kind. She had worked her fingers to the bone to buy that house in Beacon Hill. She had wanted me to have security. She had wanted me to be safe. I picked up the frame. "I got you, Grandma," I whispered. They didn't get away with it. My phone rang again. It was Austin. I stared at it. I could picture him sweating in that air-conditioned underwater restaurant, the waiters looming over him, Keisha sobbing into her napkin, the illusion of his golden life shattering into a million pieces. He wasn't calling to brag anymore. He wasn't calling to taunt me. He was calling to beg. I let it ring. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Voicemail. I waited for the notification. New voicemail from Austin. I played it. Blair. Blair, please. Pick up. They are going to arrest us. They took my passport, Blair. The hotel took my passport. Mom isn't answering. Dad isn't answering. The cards are gone. Blair, you have to help us. We are family. You can't leave us here. I am sorry, okay? I am sorry about the house. Just undo it. Please. I am begging you. I listened to it twice. I listened to the fear in his voice, the terror, the realization that for the first time in his 30 years on Earth, there was no safety net. There was no mommy to write a check. There was no daddy to make a call. There was just me. The sister he called a disappointment. The sister he mocked. The sister he robbed. I saved the voicemail. It would be excellent evidence for the sentencing hearing. It proved he knew about the fraud. It proved he knew the money was stolen. I did not call him back. I turned off my monitors. The room plunged into darkness. I stood up and put on my coat. I had 71 hours left on the clock I had given them, but honestly the game was already over. I had checkmated them in 3 moves and they didn't even know they were playing. I walked out of the office, leaving the silence behind me. I was going to go home. I was going to open a bottle of wine. And I was going to sleep like a baby, knowing that my brother was currently explaining to a Maldivian police officer why he tried to pay for a $2,000 dinner with a stolen inheritance. Paradise was closed. The real world had just come knocking. The clock ticked over to the 24th hour. One day had passed since the courier dropped the letter on my mother's table. One day since I had frozen my brother's cards in the middle of the Indian Ocean. They had spent the last 24 hours screaming, leaving me voicemails that oscillated between threats of violence and pathetic begging. They thought the worst was over. They thought the frozen credit cards were the extent of my reach. They were wrong. The credit cards were just a slap in the face to get their attention. What I was about to do now was a knife to the jugular. I stood in the lobby of the John F. Kennedy Federal Building in downtown Boston. It was a fortress of concrete and glass, a monolith of bureaucracy that terrified most people. To me, it was just another office. I clipped my visitor badge to my lapel and took the elevator to the 18th floor, the Criminal Investigation Division of the Internal Revenue Service. Most people fear the police. They fear the flashing lights and the handcuffs. But the police have rules. The police have to read you your rights. The IRS does not care about your rights. They care about your math. And if your math does not add up, they have the power to seize your life without even knocking on your door. In America, you can get away with murder if you have a good enough lawyer, but nobody gets away with tax evasion, not Al Capone, and certainly not Brenda and Gerald Montgomery. I walked down the beige hallway past cubicles filled with agents poring over spreadsheets. I stopped at a corner office. The nameplate read Special Agent David Ross. David and I had gone to accounting school together. We had spent nights studying the tax code while other students were partying. He was one of the few people who understood that numbers were a language, and if you knew how to read them, they told you everything about a person's soul. Blair. David looked up from his desk, his eyes widening. He stood and closed the door behind me. I saw the folder in your hand before I saw your face. Who is the target? I sat down and placed the thick dossier on his desk. It made a heavy thud, the sound of consequences arriving. My parents, I said, and my brother. David raised an eyebrow. He knew my history. He knew I was the black sheep. He didn't ask if I was sure. He knew I didn't make mistakes. Talk to me, he said, opening the file. I walked him through it. It was a master class in stupidity. My parents had sold the house for $2 million. That was a capital gain. In the eyes of the IRS, that was taxable income. But they hadn't reported it. Instead, they had immediately transferred the bulk of the funds, $400,000, to Austin's LLC. Here is the kicker, I said, pointing to a highlighted section of the bank ledger. Look at how they coded the transfer. David squinted at the paper. Gift, he read aloud. They marked it as a gift. Exactly, I said. They are trying to claim the lifetime gift tax exemption. But here is the problem, David. A gift has to be given with no expectation of return. But look at the next page. I flipped the page. It showed the outflows from the LLC, the car payments for my father's lease, the payments to my mother's credit card, the tuition for a private club membership that was in my father's name. They are using the LLC as a piggy bank, I explained. They gave the money to avoid the taxes on the sale, but they are still controlling the funds. That is not a gift, David. That is tax fraud. That is money laundering. They are hiding assets to lower their tax liability while still enjoying the benefits of the income. David whistled a low, impressed sound, and the structuring he asked pointed to the cash withdrawals I had flagged earlier. Textbook, I said. 10 withdrawals of $9,900 each, all under the $10,000 reporting limit, all within 2 weeks. They are trying to pull cash out to hide it from the bankruptcy courts because they know they are underwater on their own mortgage. David leaned back in his chair. This is clean, Blair. I mean, it is messy for them, but the evidence is clean. You have the wire traces, you have the intent, you have the structuring. This is a slam dunk. What is the tax liability on $1.2 million plus penalties, plus interest, plus the structuring fines? David did a quick mental calculation. With the fraud penalties, they are looking at 75% on top of the principal, plus the fines for each structured withdrawal. Blair, this is going to bankrupt them. The IRS will seize everything to cover this. The house, the cars, the retirement accounts. That is the plan. I said my voice was cold. I want a jeopardy assessment, David. David froze. A jeopardy assessment was the nuclear option of the tax world. It was a tool used only when the IRS believed that a taxpayer was about to flee the country or dissipate assets to avoid paying. It allowed the IRS to seize assets immediately, without a hearing, without a waiting period. It was an immediate freeze on every single dime they had. They are flight risks, I said, pushing the flight manifests across the desk. My brother is already in the Maldives spending the money as we speak. My mother has liquidated her jewelry. I have the receipts from the pawn shop. They are burning the evidence, David. If you do not freeze it now, there will be nothing left to tax. David looked at the documents. He looked at the pictures of Austin in the underwater hotel. He looked at the withdrawal slips. He picked up his phone. I am calling the field director, he said. We can have the levy in place within the hour. I watched him make the call. I heard him use words like flight risk and immediate dissipation of assets. I heard him give the order. When he hung up, he looked at me. It is done, he said. The banks are being notified right now. Their accounts will be frozen in approximately 20 minutes. Thank you, David. Just doing my job, Blair. But are you okay? This is your family. I stood up and smoothed my skirt. No, David. This is just an audit. And they failed. I walked out of the federal building and into the bright Boston sunlight. I checked my watch. 20 minutes. I got into my car and drove toward the financial district. I wanted to be close to the blast radius. Across town, Brenda Montgomery was having a very bad morning. She had woken up with a migraine, the result of too much gin and too much panic. The letter from yesterday was still sitting on her kitchen counter, taped back together like a bad omen. She had tried to call Gerald, but he was useless. He was pacing the living room, muttering about his heart medication. He had always been weak. That was why she loved him and despised him in equal measure. She needed to calm down. She needed to feel in control. And for Brenda, control meant spending money. It meant retail therapy. She got dressed in her best Chanel suit. She put on her oversized sunglasses to hide her puffy eyes. She grabbed her purse and marched out to the car. She was going to the jewelry district. She was going to buy something beautiful, something expensive, something that proved she was still Brenda Montgomery, the queen of the hill. She walked into Winston's Jewelers. The staff knew her by name. Mrs. Montgomery, the manager, gushed, rushing over. What a pleasure. We just got in a sapphire necklace that would match your eyes perfectly. Show me, Brenda said, sitting down on the velvet stool. She needed this. She needed the difference. She needed the shine. The manager brought out the necklace. It was stunning. Deep blue sapphires surrounded by diamonds. $25,000. I will take it, Brenda said, not even asking the price. Wrap it up. She pulled out her black Amex card, the heavy metal card that was supposed to have no limit. She handed it to the manager with a trembling hand. The manager swiped the card. He waited. He frowned. He swiped it again. Mrs. Montgomery said, his voice dropping to a discreet whisper. It seems to have declined. Brenda felt her stomach drop. That is impossible, she snapped. Try it again. It must be a system error. I have tried it twice, ma'am. It says contact issuer. Do you have another card? She pulled out her Visa, the one linked to the joint account with Gerald. Declined. She pulled out her debit card, the one linked to her personal savings where she kept her emergency fund. Declined. The manager was looking at her differently now. The difference was gone, replaced by suspicion. Ma'am, perhaps you should call your bank, he said, sliding the cards back to her. We cannot hold the necklace. Brenda snatched the cards and stormed out of the store. Her hands were shaking so hard she dropped her keys in the parking lot. She scrambled to pick them up, breaking a nail. She got into her car and dialed the bank. She stabbed the keypad. Welcome to First Republic Automated Banking. Please enter your account number. She entered it. We are sorry. We are unable to access your account information at this time. Please hold for a representative. She waited. The hold music sounded like a funeral dirge. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. Sweat was trickling down her back, ruining her silk blouse. Finally, a human voice. "This is Sarah in the fraud department." Sarah Brenda screamed. "What is going on? My cards are declined. I am trying to make a purchase. Unfreeze my accounts immediately." "Mrs. Montgomery." Sarah said, her voice was icy. "I am afraid I cannot do that. We received a legal order this morning." "What order?" Brenda demanded. "From who?" "Blair." "Is it my daughter?" "No, ma'am," Sarah said. "It is not from an individual. It is a federal levy." "A what?" "A notice of levy from the Internal Revenue Service. They have frozen all assets associated with your Social Security number and your husband's." "Mrs. Montgomery." "Checking. Savings. Investment. Even the safe deposit boxes. The IRS." Brenda whispered, the phone slipping in her sweat-slicked hand. "Yes, ma'am. The order cites suspected tax evasion and money laundering. We are legally required to hold all funds until further notice from the federal government. You have zero available balance." Zero. Brenda looked at the gas gauge in her car. It was near empty. She looked at her purse. She had $20 in cash. That was it. That was all she had left in the world. $20. "But I need to buy groceries," she stammered. "I need to put gas in the car." "I am sorry, ma'am," Sarah said. "There is nothing we can do. You will have to contact the IRS directly. Is there anything else I can help you with?" The line went dead. Brenda sat in the parking lot of the jewelry store. The world was spinning. The IRS, tax evasion, money laundering. It was Blair. It had to be Blair. She was an accountant. She knew how to do this. She had pushed the button. Brenda screamed. It was a primal sound of rage and terror. She beat her hands against the steering wheel until her palms were bruised. She had 71 hours left on the deadline. But it didn't matter anymore. The money wasn't hers to give back. The government had it. She was trapped. She started the car. She had to get home. She had to warn Gerald. They had to run. Maybe they could go to Canada. Maybe they could hide. But as she pulled out of the parking lot, she saw a black sedan pull out behind her. And then another one. Tinted windows. Government plates. They weren't just freezing the money. They were watching her. The paranoia set in. Every car looked like an agent. Every person on the street looked like a witness. She drove home, her eyes darting to the rearview mirror every 5 seconds. When she pulled into her driveway, she saw Gerald sitting on the front steps. He had his head in his hands. "They cut the power," Gerald said, looking up. His face was gray. "The electric company. They said the auto pay bounced. And the water, too." Brenda looked at her mansion. Her beautiful, perfect mansion. It was dark. It was cold. "We have to leave," she whispered. "We have to go now." "Where?" Gerald asked. "We have no money, Brenda. The cards don't work. I tried to buy liquor at the corner store. Declined. In front of everyone." "We will drive," Brenda said. "We have a car. We have a full tank of gas in the SUV. We can get to the border." She ran inside. She grabbed a suitcase. She started throwing clothes into it. Random things. Evening gowns, tennis shoes, her fur coat. She ran to the safe in the master bedroom closet. She punched in the code. Empty. She had taken the cash out last week to give to Austin for his trip. She sank to the floor amidst the pile of designer clothes. She had nothing. She was a woman who defined herself by her possessions, and now she was hollow. Her phone rang. It was Austin again. "Mom," he was sobbing. "Mom, they are kicking us out. They are putting us on a boat. They are sending us to the main island. The police are waiting there, Mom. They said something about international fraud." "Mom, you have to help me. I can't," Brenda whispered into the phone. I can't help you, Austin. I can't even help myself. Mom, please, Austin wailed. I have to go, Brenda said. She hung up on her golden child. She hung up on the son she had sacrificed everything for. She walked downstairs. Gerald was still sitting on the steps. What do we do? He asked. We wait, Brenda said, sitting down beside him on the cold stone. We waited for 72 hours to run out. And then what? Then we go to jail. She looked at the manicured lawn. The sold sign was gone from Blair's house, but a new sign had appeared on her own lawn in her mind. Foreclosure. Seized. Ruined. She realized then that she had underestimated her daughter in the most fatal way possible. She thought Blair was weak because she was kind. She thought she was stupid because she was quiet. But Blair wasn't weak. She was patient. And she was thorough. Brenda Montgomery sat in the dark of her own making, and for the first time in her life, she felt true fear. Not the fear of social embarrassment, the fear of survival. The clock ticked, 60 hours left. But the game was already over. The digital clock on my monitor flipped to 48 hours remaining. The silence in my apartment was absolutely broken only by the rhythmic tapping of my fingers against the mahogany desk. I had not slept. Sleep was for the innocent, and right now I was playing judge, jury, and executioner. I watched the GPS tracker on Austin's phone. It was a small blue dot moving across a digital map of the Middle East. They had been evicted from the underwater paradise of the Conrad Rangali Island, just as I predicted. The hotel manager, a man whose professionalism I now deeply admired, had escorted them to the supply boat. Not the seaplane. The seaplane required payment. The supply boat was free, but it was slow, hot, and smelled of diesel and rotting fish. They had spent 4 hours tossing on the waves, their luggage piled around them like the debris of a shipwreck, before reaching the main airport in Malé. They had used the return tickets I knew they had, first class on Emirates connecting through Dubai to Boston. It was the only asset they had left that I hadn't frozen yet. I could have canceled the tickets. I could have stranded them in the Maldives. But I didn't. I needed them to move. I needed them to enter a jurisdiction where the laws were stricter and the consequences for theft were immediate. I needed them in Dubai. The dot landed at Dubai International Airport. Terminal 3, the shopping capital of the world. I knew Keisha. I knew her coping mechanisms. When she was stressed, she shopped. When she was scared, she shopped. And right now, she was terrified. I pulled up the banking interface for a specific credit card. It was an old American Express Platinum card. Years ago, when I had first started making real money and still foolishly believed in buying my family's love, I had added Austin as an authorized user. I told him it was for life or death emergencies only. He had given it to Keisha. I knew she had it. I had seen it in her wallet during Thanksgiving. I had never canceled it because until 48 hours ago I was a doormat. Now it was a landmine. I watched the transaction feed. I waited. They had a 3-hour layover, enough time to panic, enough time to fight, enough time to make one fatal mistake. I imagined them walking through the gleaming terminal. Keisha would be exhausted, her makeup smeared, the humidity of the boat ride having ruined her hair. Austin would be frantic, sweating through his linen shirt, checking over his shoulder for the authorities he was sure were following him. They were broke. Their cards were dead. Their phones were restricted. But that old Amex was burning a hole in Keisha's designer purse. Then I saw it. The notification flashed across my screen like a lightning strike. Transaction authorization request. Merchant Hermes Duty Free Dubai DXB. Amount $12,500. Item handbag. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. She had done it. She couldn't help herself. She probably thought she could buy the bag and resell it in Boston for cash and have a lifeline. Or maybe she just wanted one last hit of luxury to numb the shame of the supply boat. It didn't matter. She had swiped the card. I picked up my phone. I dialed the number on the back of my own card. I bypassed the automated system with a priority code. "This is the fraud department," a voice said. "This is Blair Montgomery. I said, my voice was steady and cold. I am receiving an alert for a transaction in Dubai. Yes, Ms. Montgomery. A purchase at Hermes. Did you authorize this? No, I said. I absolutely did not. That card was stolen from my home 2 days ago. The person using it has no authorization, and I have reason to believe this is part of an international identity theft ring. The operator gasped. International identity theft. Yes, I lied smoothly. I believe the perpetrators are fleeing prosecution in the United States. Please decline the charge, and please notify local security immediately. This is a felony amount. Understood, Ms. Montgomery. Declining the charge now, we are contacting Dubai Airport Police. I hung up. I switched back to the tracker. The blue dot was stationary near the luxury wing of Terminal 3. I closed my eyes and pictured the scene. The sales associate holding the card with a polite but firm smile. The decline message. Keisha argued, her voice rising in that shrill entitlement she used whenever she was told no. Austin trying to hush her, looking around nervously. And then the police. Dubai police do not mess around. They are polite, they are efficient, and they have zero tolerance for financial fraud. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Austin. I answered. Blair screamed. He was hyperventilating. I could hear the sounds of a scuffle in the background. Someone was crying. A man was speaking in Arabic, calm and authoritative. Hello, Austin, I said. Enjoying the layover? They have her, he shrieked. The police. They grabbed Keisha. They have her in handcuffs, Blair. They are saying she stole the card. They are saying it is identity theft. It is identity theft, Austin, I said. That is my card. I did not give her permission to buy a $12,000 Birkin bag. Did you? She just wanted to feel better. Austin sobbed. She is scared of Blair. You have to tell them. Tell them it is a misunderstanding. Tell them she is authorized. I cannot do what I said, because she isn't, and neither are you. You stole my house. You stole my inheritance, and now your wife tried to steal from my credit line. These are just consequences for Austin. They are taking her away, he yelled. They are taking her to the station. They took her passport, Blair. They confiscated her passport. She can't leave. I looked at the flight data on my second screen. Their connecting flight to Boston was boarding in 45 minutes. That is unfortunate, I said. Dubai has very strict laws about debt and theft. She might be there a while. Austin pleaded. What should I do? I can't stay here. I don't have any money. I don't have a hotel. If I miss this flight, I am stranded. That is a dilemma, isn't it? I said. You can stay with your wife and go to jail with her. Or you can get on that plane. There was silence on the line. A long, heavy silence. I could hear the gears turning in his selfish, survivalist brain. He looked at Keisha, the woman he had promised to love and cherish, the partner in crime who had helped him spend my money. And then he looked at the departure gate. He was a coward. I knew it. My mother knew it. Keisha was about to find out. I can't help her from here, Austin stammered. I need to get home. I need to get to Mom and Dad. They can fix this. If I stay, we both rot in jail. I have to go to Blair. I have to go. He was justifying it to himself. He was rewriting the narrative in real time. He wasn't abandoning his wife. He was going for reinforcements. It was pathetic. So you are leaving her, I asked. You are leaving her alone in a foreign prison. I have no choice, he screamed. You did this. This is your fault. No, Austin, I said. You bought the ticket. Now you take the ride. I heard the airport announcement in the background. Final boarding call for Emirates flight to Boston. I have to go, he said. And then he hung up. I watched the tracker. The blue dot separated. One signal remained stationary near the security office, Keisha's phone. The other dot, Austin's phone, began to move. It moved fast. It moved toward the gate. He was running. He was running away from his wife, running away from his responsibility, running back to the safety of his mommy and daddy. I watched as the dot moved onto the tarmac. I watched as the flight status changed to departed. He had actually done it. He had left her. I felt a surge of disgust so potent it almost made me sick. But it was quickly replaced by a cold satisfaction. The team was broken. The dynamic duo of greed was separated by an ocean and a prison cell. I pulled up the email for the U.S. consulate in Dubai. I drafted a quick note. To Consular Services. Subject citizen detained Keisha Montgomery. Message. Please be advised that U.S. citizen Keisha Montgomery has been detained by Dubai authorities for financial fraud. Her traveling companion and husband, Austin Montgomery, has boarded a flight to the U.S. and has abandoned her without legal counsel or funds. I hit send. It was the only kindness I would offer her. At least someone would know where she was. I sat back in my chair. The office was quiet. The sun was fully up now, casting long shadows across the floor. 48 hours down, 24 to go. My parents were broke and under IRS investigation. Keisha was in a Dubai jail cell, and Austin was trapped in a metal tube at 30,000 feet flying home to a life that no longer existed. When he landed at Logan Airport, he would be expecting a ride. He would be expecting his parents to save him. Instead, he was going to find me and the FBI. I checked the tracking on the federal indictment. Harrison had filed it an hour ago. The warrant for Austin's arrest had been issued. Conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering. They would be waiting for him at customs. I imagined the flight. 12 hours. 12 hours for Austin to sit in the dark, terrified, alone, drinking cheap airplane water because his cards didn't work. 12 hours to think about his wife sitting in a cell. 12 hours to wonder what was waiting for him. It was psychological torture. And it was exactly what he deserved. I picked up my coffee cup. It was cold. I drank it anyway. I had one more stop to make, one more person to break before the clock ran out. My mother. She was still in her mansion, probably sitting in the dark, hiding from the neighbors. She didn't know about Keisha yet. She didn't know her golden boy was flying home alone in disgrace. I decided to pay her a visit. Not a digital one, a real one. I grabbed my coat and keys. I checked the surveillance app on my phone connected to the hidden cameras I had installed at the Beacon Hill house months ago for security. The movers were gone. The house was empty. My house. I drove to Brookline. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and black. I pulled up to my parents' house. It looked dark. The party decorations were gone, but the lawn was littered with trampled cups and deflated balloons, the garbage of a celebration that had died prematurely. I walked up the front steps. I didn't knock. I used the key I had kept, the key they forgot to ask for when they kicked me out. I opened the door. "Mom." I called out, my voice echoing in the foyer. "Dad." I found them in the living room. My father was asleep on the couch with an empty bottle of scotch on the floor. My mother was sitting in a wing-back chair, staring at the unlit fireplace. She was wearing the same clothes from yesterday, crumpled and stained. She looked up when I entered. Her eyes were dull. She whispered, "You did this." I walked over to the fireplace and stood looking down at her. "Austin is on a plane," I said. "He lands in 12 hours. She set up a spark of hope in her eyes. "He is coming home. Thank God. We can fix this. Once he is here, we can fix this." "He is coming home alone," I said. "He left Keisha in Dubai. She was arrested by Mom for credit card fraud. She is in jail. And Austin ran away." My mother's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "And when he lands," I continue, "the FBI will be waiting for him. I filed the charges this morning. He is going to federal prison, Mom, just like you." My mother started to shake. "No," she whimpered. "No, not Austin. He is a good boy. He didn't do anything. It was you. You trapped him." "I gave him a choice," I said. "I gave you all a choice. 72 hours. You spent the first 48 lying, spending, and running. You have 24 hours left." I pulled a document from my bag. It was a confession. A simple single-page document admitting to the forgery and the theft. "Sign this," I said. "Sign this, and I will ask the prosecutor for leniency. I won't drop the charges, but I will ask for minimum sentencing. Refuse, and I will ensure you die in prison." My mother looked at the paper. She looked at my father passed out drunk on the couch. She looked at the cold, dark house. She realized then that her golden boy was gone. Her money was gone. Her reputation was gone. She reached out a trembling hand and took the pen. She signed, "Brenda Montgomery." I took the paper back. "Thank you," I said. I turned to leave. "Blair," she called out, her voice cracking. "Why? Why did you do this? We are family." I stopped at the door. I looked back at the woman who had abandoned me at an airport when I was 15. The woman who had sold my sanctuary. "Because, Mom," I said, "you taught me to be ambitious. You taught me to get what I deserve." And I walked out into the night, 24 hours left. But the war was over. I had won. The digital clock on my microwave hummed. 71 hours, 1 hour remaining. The rain outside was relentless, hammering against the window pane of my modest apartment in the North End. It was a far cry from the Beacon Hill brownstone or the Brookline mansion, but it was mine. And unlike my parents' home, it was warm and the lights were on. I sat at my small kitchen table, my hands wrapped around a mug of tea, waiting. I knew they would come. Desperation has a smell, and I could smell it all the way from the suburbs. They had no cards left to play. Their accounts were frozen by the IRS. Their golden son was in federal custody at Logan Airport. Their daughter-in-law was rotting in a Dubai jail cell. They had nowhere to go but to the person they had discarded. A knock at the door. It was faint and hesitant. Not the pounding of a parent demanding obedience, but the scratching of a beggar asking for scraps. I walked to the door and opened it. Brenda and Gerald Montgomery stood in the hallway. They looked like ghosts of the people I had seen 3 days ago. My mother was wearing a trench coat over her pajamas, her hair matted and wet from the rain. Her face was stripped of makeup, revealing the deep lines of age and panic she usually hid so well. My father was slumped against the doorframe, his eyes bloodshot and unfocused. He smelled of stale scotch and fear. "May we come in?" my mother whispered. Her voice was unrecognizable. It was small and broken. I stepped aside. They walked into my apartment, their eyes darting around the small space. I saw my mother's lip curl instinctively, a reflex of judgment she couldn't suppress even when she was destitute. She looked at my IKEA furniture, my small television, and the lack of molding on the ceiling. She was measuring my worth by my square footage even now. "Please sit," I said, gesturing to the sofa. They sat. My father groaned as he lowered himself, looking at his hands. My mother perched on the edge of the cushion, clutching her purse as if it contained the secrets of the universe instead of maxed-out credit cards. "We received the notice," my father said in a raspy voice. "About 72 hours. I nodded. "And the deadline is in 50 minutes. Blair." My mother started, tears instantly filling her eyes. "You have to stop this. You have to call the lawyer. You have to call the IRS. They froze everything. We can't even buy food. We have nothing." "You have the house," I said calmly. "Or you did until you sold mine." "We sold it for the family," Brenda cried. "For Austin. He needed us." "You don't understand what it is like to be a parent, Blair. You make sacrifices." "Sacrifices," I repeated. "You sacrificed me. You sacrificed my security for his luxury. That is not parenting, Mom. That is cannibalism." "We can fix it," my father said, looking up. "We can pay you back. I have a pension coming in a few years. We can set up a payment plan. Just drop the lawsuit. Tell the IRS it was a mistake. Tell them you authorized the sale." I looked at him. This man who had watched me grow up, who had taught me to ride a bike, who had stood by while his wife erased me from the family portrait. He wanted me to lie to the federal government to save his skin. "You want me to commit perjury?" I asked. You want me to tell the IRS that I allowed you to launder $1.2 million. Do you know what happens to accountants who lie to the IRS? Dad, they go to prison. I am not going to prison for you. But we are your parents, Brenda wailed. Doesn't that mean anything? I carried you for 9 months. I raised you. Doesn't family count for anything? It counts for everything I said. That is why I am doing this. Because Grandma Josephine was family too. And you stole from her. She is dead. Brenda snapped, her true nature flashing through the tears. She doesn't care. She would have wanted Austin to be happy. No, I said. She wouldn't. And I can prove it. I stood up and walked to the small coffee table in front of them. I had set up a portable projector earlier, pointing it at the blank white wall opposite the sofa. I picked up the remote. What is this? My mother asked, wiping her eyes. This, I said, is the truth. I pressed the button. The projector hummed to life, casting a bright rectangle of light onto the wall. The first image appeared. It was a legal document. The font was old typewriter style, dense and formal. Do you recognize this, Mom? I asked. Brenda squinted. It looks like a deed. No, I said. This is the trust document. The Josephine Miller Irrevocable Trust, dated 5 years before she died. I clicked the remote. The text zoomed in on a specific clause. Clause 4, Section A. The property located at 44 Beacon Street shall be held in trust for the sole benefit of Blair Montgomery. This trust is irrevocable and cannot be altered, amended, or revoked by the grantor or any trustee. The property may not be sold, mortgaged, or encumbered without the express written consent of the beneficiary. I turned to them. Do you know what irrevocable means, Dad? My father swallowed hard. It means it can't be changed. Exactly, I said. Grandma didn't just leave me the house in a will. She knew you, Brenda. She knew you would try to talk her out of it. She knew you would try to guilt her into giving it to Austin, so she locked it up. She put it in a steel box that you couldn't touch. You were the executor, Mom, I continued. That means you had a fiduciary duty to protect the asset for me. By selling it, you didn't just commit forgery. You committed embezzlement of a federal trust. That carries a mandatory minimum sentence. There is no probation for betraying a fiduciary duty of this magnitude. My mother was shaking her head back and forth like a pendulum. No, she whispered. No, she wouldn't do that to me. She trusted me. She trusted you to be a mother, I said. And you failed. So she became one for me. I clicked the remote again. The image changed. Now on the wall was a video. It was grainy black and white footage taken from a high angle. My parents leaned forward, confusion replacing their fear. That looks like... My father started. That is Mr. Baxter's office. It was. The timestamp in the corner read, October 12th, the day I was in London. In the video, my mother and father were sitting across from the realtor, Mr. Baxter. My mother was laughing while holding a champagne flute. My father was signing a document. Wait, Brenda said, her voice rising in panic. Where did you get this? That is a private meeting. I watched the screen. In the video, the door opened. A man walked in. He was wearing a dark suit, carrying a briefcase. He placed the briefcase on the table and opened it. It was filled with cashier's checks. Brenda stood up to shake the man's hand. She looked triumphant. She took the checks. Who is that? My father asked, pointing at the man in the video. The buyer. The man from New York. I clicked the remote, pausing the video on the buyer's face. Look closer, I said. They stared at the grainy image. The man was nondescript, middle-aged, professional. I don't know him, Brenda said. He is just an investor. He represented a company, Beacon Hill Holdings, LLC. I smiled. It was the first time I had smiled in 3 days. Yes, I said. Beacon Hill Holdings. A shell company registered in Delaware. I clicked the remote again. A new document appeared on the wall. The Articles of Incorporation for Beacon Hill Holdings. Look at the owner, I said. They read the line at the bottom. Sole member Blair Montgomery. The silence in the room was absolute. It was heavy enough to crush bones. My mother stopped breathing. Her eyes bulged. She looked from the screen to me and back again. Her brain was trying to process information that was simply too large to fit. You, she whispered. I bought the house, Mom. I bought my own house. I used the money I made from my career. The career you laughed at. The career you said was boring. I have been saving and investing for 10 years. When I saw the house go on the market, when I got the alert from the Registry of Deeds, I didn't stop the sale. I let it happen. I hired the actor to play the buyer. I set up the LLC. I authorized the wire transfer. The $1.2 million you stole. The money you spent on the Maldives, on the condo, on the car. It was my money. You didn't steal from a stranger. You didn't steal from a bank. You stole from me. Twice. First, you tried to steal the house Grandma gave me. And then you accepted at one point $2 million of my own hard-earned cash and blew it on a vacation for your son. My father made a sound like a wounded animal. He buried his face in his hands and started to sob. Oh my God. Oh my God, Blair. Brenda was paralyzed. She was staring at me as if I had turned into a monster. You set us up, she hissed. You entrapped us. No, I said. My voice was ice cold. I tested you. I gave you a rope. I wanted to see if you would hang yourselves with it. And you didn't just hang yourselves. You built the gallows, you tied the knot, and you jumped. I have it all on tape, Mom. I have you signing my name. I have you taking the money. I have you laughing about how stupid I am. And because I am the owner of the company that bought the house, I am the victim of the fraud. I am the plaintiff, and I am the primary witness. There is no way out. There is no defense. You sold a property you didn't own to the person who actually owned it, using money you stole from the person you sold it to. It is a perfect circle of crime. And you are in the middle of it. My mother collapsed. She didn't faint. She just folded in on herself. She slid off the sofa and onto the rug. She looked small. She looked old. Why did she sob? Why would you do this to us? Why didn't you just tell us to stop? Because you wouldn't have listened, I said. You never listen. You would have found another way to take it. You would have guilted me. You would have harassed me. You would have made my life a living hell until I gave in. I had to burn it down, Mom. I had to make sure you could never hurt me again. I looked at the clock. 71 hours and 55 minutes. You have 5 minutes left, I said. My father looked up. His face was wet with tears. What happens in 5 minutes? In 5 minutes, I will send the final confirmation to the FBI. I handed over the video of the sale. I hand over the proof of the shell company, and the police come to your house. Please, Blair, my father begged. He got off the sofa and got on his knees. He crawled toward me. Please don't do this. We will do anything. We will go away. We will disappear. Just don't put us in jail. I am an old man. I will die there. I looked down at him. This man who had stood by while his wife slapped me yesterday. You should have thought about that when you witnessed the signature, Dad. You should have thought about that when you drank the champagne. I stood up. Get out, I said. Brenda looked up. Get out. Where do we go? I don't know what I said. And for the first time in my life, I don't care. Go to a shelter. Go to a park bench. Go to hell. Just get out of my apartment. They struggled to their feet. They looked like refugees. They walked to the door. My mother stopped with her hand on the knob. She looked back at me. There was no love in her eyes, only hate, pure distilled hatred. You are evil, she spat. You are a demon. I smiled. No, Mom, I am just disappointed. Remember. I closed the door in their faces. I locked the deadbolt. I walked back to the table. The projector was still running. The words Blair Montgomery glowed on the wall. I picked up my phone. I dialed Harrison. Time is up, I said. Execute. I heard the keys clacking on the other end. Done, Harrison said. The package is with the district attorney. The warrants are being issued. Thank you, Harrison. Blair said, his voice soft. Are you okay? I looked around my quiet apartment. I listened to the rain. I am fine, Harrison. I am finally fine. I hung up. I sat down on the sofa where my parents had just been. I felt a weight lift off my chest. A weight I had been carrying for 33 years. The house in Beacon Hill was safe. It was back in my name legally and bindingly. The money was gone, but I could make more money. I was good at that. But the fear, the obligation, the guilt, that was gone too. And that was worth every penny. I poured the rest of my tea down the sink. I didn't need it. I opened a bottle of wine. A cheap bottle. Not Cristal. Just a nice red blend. I poured a glass and toasted the empty room. Here is the family, I said aloud. And here is to knowing when to fire them. Outside I heard the sirens start. They were distant at first, then getting closer. The 72 hours were up. The reckoning had arrived. The digital timer on my phone hit 0. 72 hours. Exactly. The silence in my apartment was absolute, but across town in the wealthy suburb of Brookline, the silence was about to be shattered. I did not need to be there to know what was happening. I had orchestrated every second of it. I had reviewed the operational plans with the federal agents. I knew the exact moment the convoy of black SUVs would turn the corner onto the tree-lined street where my parents lived. I sat in my car parked 3 houses down from the mansion my parents had bought with money they did not have. I wanted to see it. I needed to witness the end of the empire they had built on lies and my stolen inheritance. The streetlights flickered on, casting long shadows across the manicured lawns. It was a Tuesday evening, quiet and peaceful until the air was ripped apart. Sirens. Not one, but dozens. They wailed in a dissonant chorus, growing louder and closer until the ground seemed to vibrate. Blue and red lights flooded the street, bouncing off the windows of the colonial houses, turning the neighborhood into a strobe-lit disco of impending doom. 3 black SUVs screeched to a halt in front of my parents' driveway, followed by 2 marked police cruisers. The doors flew open. Agents in windbreakers emblazoned with IRS, CID, and FBI swarmed the property. They did not walk. They ran. They moved with the precision of a military unit taking down a high-value target. I watched as the neighbors' lights flickered on. Curtains twitched. Front doors opened. The social circle my mother had spent 40 years curating was stepping out onto their porches in their bathrobes to watch the spectacle. This was the social death she had feared more than anything, and it was happening on a grand scale. The agents pounded on the front door. Federal agents, open up. There was no answer at first. I imagined my parents inside, frozen in their living room, the realization of their fate crashing down on them like a tidal wave. My father probably reaching for another drink, my mother trying to find a place to hide her jewelry. Open the door, or we will breach. The door swung open. My mother stood there. She was wearing a silk dressing gown, trying to summon the imperious attitude that had served her so well at country club lunches. But she looked small in the flashing lights. She looked terrified. "What is the meaning of this?" she shrieked, her voice carrying down the street. "Do you know who I am? You can't just barge onto my property. Get off my porch." An agent stepped forward. He was tall, broad-shouldered, holding a piece of paper that looked remarkably like the one she had torn up at the golf club. "Brenda Montgomery," said, his voice cutting through her hysteria. "We have a warrant for your arrest, and for the arrest of Gerald Montgomery." "Arrest," she screamed, backing away. "For what I have done, nothing. This is a mistake. A terrible mistake. I will sue you. I will sue the department." The agent stepped into the foyer, forcing her back. "Charges include conspiracy to commit wire fraud, tax evasion, money laundering, and the embezzlement of a federal trust. You have the right to remain silent." My father appeared behind her. He looked like a ghost. He was pale, shaking his hands held up in surrender. He did not fight. He did not argue. He offered his wrist to the officer who stepped forward with handcuffs. The click of the metal locking around his wrists was a sound I could hear in my imagination clear as a bell. Gerald did something, Brenda yelled, slapping at the agent's hands as they reached for her. Tell them. Tell them it is a misunderstanding. It is over, Brenda, my father mumbled, his head hanging low. It is over. No. Brenda screamed, kicking and thrashing as they cuffed her. I am not going to jail. I am a victim here. My daughter is doing this. She is crazy. She is trying to hurt us. The agents marched them out of the house, the walk of shame. The neighbors were watching openly, now phones out, recording the downfall of the Montgomery dynasty. My mother saw them. She saw Mrs. Higgins from the garden club filming. She saw the doctor from next door shaking his head. She broke. Wait, she wailed, her composure shattering completely. Wait, please. Let me make a call. My daughter. You have to call my daughter. The agent paused, his grip firm on her arm. Which daughter is ma'am? Blair, she sobbed. Blair Montgomery. She is an accountant. A powerful accountant. She works with big firms. She can fix this. She knows how to handle audits. She will explain everything. She will save me. Call her. Tell her her mother needs her. I rolled down my window slightly, letting the cool night air into the car. I listened. The agent looked at her. He looked at the paperwork in his hand. Then he looked back at her with a mixture of pity and disbelief. Ma'am, he said, his voice loud enough for the neighbors to hear. We do not need to call your daughter. Yes, you do. Brenda begged desperately, clutching at a lifeline that did not exist. She is the best. She will clear this up. She loves me. She will help me. Help. The agent shook his head. Ma'am, your daughter is the one who built this case. Brenda froze. The world seemed to stop spinning for a second. What? The agent held up the warrant. The signature at the bottom, the authorizing signature for the forensic audit that uncovered the laundering, was highlighted. This affidavit was sworn and signed by Senior Forensic Auditor Blair Montgomery, he read. Your daughter is the complaining witness, ma'am. She is the one who tracked the funds. She is the one who reported the tax evasion. She isn't coming to save you. She is the one who sent us. The scream that tore out of my mother's throat was not human. It was the sound of a woman watching her entire reality dissolve. It was the sound of total, absolute betrayal. She looked around wildly, her eyes searching the darkness beyond the flashing lights. Blair screamed into the night. Blair. I know you are out there. How could you? I am your mother. I watched from the shadows. I did not feel guilt. I did not feel sadness. I felt a cold, hard resolution. She was right. She was my mother. And she had taught me that in this family, we do what is necessary to survive. I was just being a good student. The agents pushed her into the back of the cruiser. She fought them all the way, her dignity left somewhere on the front lawn along with the deflated balloons. My father followed, silently, disappearing into the second car. As the convoy pulled away, leaving the house dark and empty, I started my engine. Phase 1 was complete. But the night was not over. I drove toward the airport. I checked the flight tracker on my phone. Emirates flight EK237 from Dubai touched down at Logan International Airport in 20 minutes. Austin was coming home. He had spent 12 hours in the air. 12 hours without his wife, who was currently sitting in a holding cell in the United Arab Emirates, waiting for a lawyer she could not afford. 12 hours without access to money because I had frozen every card in his wallet. 12 hours of terror, wondering what was waiting for him on the other side of customs. He probably thought he could talk his way out of it. That was Austin's superpower. He thought he could charm the customs agents, maybe cry a little and tell them he was a victim of a banking error. He thought he could call Mom and Dad, and they would be waiting at the arrivals curb with a warm car and a checkbook. He did not know that Mom and Dad were currently being booked at the Federal Detention Center. He did not know that the checkbook was evidence. I parked in the short-term lot and walked into Terminal E. The International Arrivals Hall was bright and sterile. Families were waiting with flowers and balloons. Drivers were holding signs with names on them. I stood at the back near the exit doors. I wanted to see his face. I waited. Passengers began to file out, tired travelers pushing carts full of luggage, businessmen checking their phones. And then I saw him. Austin looked wrecked. His linen vacation clothes were wrinkled and stained. His face was pale beneath his tan, his eyes darting nervously around the terminal. He was pushing a cart with 3 massive suitcases of Louis Vuitton luggage my mother had bought him for his birthday. He was alone. No Keisha, no entourage, just a scared little boy in a man's body. He cleared the final sliding doors and scanned the crowd. He was looking for our parents. He was looking for salvation. Instead, he found 2 men in suits standing directly in his path. They were not smiling. They were not holding a sign. They were holding badges. Austin Montgomery, one of the agents said, stepping forward to block his cart. Austin flinched. Yes, who are you? I am in a hurry. My parents are picking me up. Federal Bureau of Investigation, the agent said. You are under arrest. Austin tried to laugh, but it came out as a squeak. Arrest. For what? I didn't do anything. I just got back from vacation. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, and interstate transportation of stolen property, the agent recited mechanically. Austin tried to push past them. This is a mistake. My sister is pranking me. Blair is crazy. You have to listen to me. The agents did not listen. They grabbed his arms. They spun him around. They slammed him against the wall of the terminal right next to a poster welcoming visitors to Boston. Passengers stopped to watch. People pulled out their phones. Austin Montgomery, the golden child, was being handcuffed in front of 100 strangers. You have the right to remain silent, the agent said, tightening the cuffs. I want my lawyer, Austin screamed, struggling against them. I want my mother. Call Brenda Montgomery. She will fix this. Your mother is in federal custody, the agent said calmly as he patted him down. She was arrested an hour ago. And your father. Nobody is coming for you, son. Austin went limp. His legs gave out, and the agents had to hold him up. He looked around the terminal, his eyes wild and desperate. And then he saw me. I was standing 20 feet away, leaning against a pillar. I was wearing my work clothes, a simple blazer and slacks. I looked him right in the eye. He stared at me. He saw the lack of pity on my face. He saw the victory. Blair, he mouthed. Help me. I just shook my head slowly. I lifted my hand and gave him a small wave. The same bye-bye gesture he had given me in the backyard 3 days ago. The agents hauled him up and began to march him toward the exit. He was crying now, sobbing loud, ugly tears that echoed in the terminal. My luggage, he cried. My things. Evidence, the agent said, pushing the cart aside. It is all evidence now. I watched them drag him away. I watched as the automatic doors swallowed him up. He was gone. They were all gone. The 72 hours were up. I walked out of the terminal and into the cool night air. The city lights of Boston twinkled in the distance. Somewhere in that city, my grandmother's house was sitting empty, waiting for its rightful owner to return. I took a deep breath. The air tasted clean. It tasted like justice. I got into my car and drove. Not to the office, not to my apartment. I drove to Beacon Hill. I pulled up in front of the brownstone. The sold sign was still there, a jagged scar on the lawn. But it did not matter. The legal paperwork was already filed. The clawback motion was in progress. The LLC that had bought it was mine. The house was mine. I walked up the steps and touched the cold wood of the front door. I am back, Grandma, I whispered. The war was over. The enemy had been captured. And I was the last one standing. The federal courthouse in Boston was designed to intimidate. High ceilings, marble floors, and the heavy scent of old wood and older laws. But as I walked toward the plaintiff's table, the only thing I felt was the cold steel of anticipation. My parents. Brenda and Gerald sat at the defense table. They had traded their country club attire for modest, somber clothes. My mother wore a gray cardigan that looked like it had been pulled from a donation bin, and my father hunched over his hands, playing the part of the confused elderly victim to perfection. They were trying to look like the poor, abandoned parents of a heartless corporate shark. Their lawyer, a man named Mr. Ford, who had a reputation for turning juries against wealthy victims, stood up to begin his opening statement. He walked back and forth in front of the jury box, shaking his head with theatrical sadness. He painted a picture of a family in crisis of parents who had made a desperate mistake to save their son, and of a daughter who had turned her back on them. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Mr. Ford began, his voice dripping with manufactured empathy. You have heard the prosecution throw around big words: wire fraud, embezzlement, money laundering. But let us look at the human story here. These are not career criminals, these are parents. Desperate parents who were drowning in debt trying to help their son, who was struggling with his mental health. And where was their daughter during this crisis? Where was Blair Montgomery? He pointed a finger at me, his face twisting into a scowl. She was traveling the world. She was sitting in high-rise offices making millions. She was living a life of luxury while her parents worried about how to keep the lights on. She claims she was harmed. She claims she is a victim. But ask yourselves, is a woman with her resources really a victim because her parents borrowed against an asset to survive? Or is she a vindictive, ungrateful child punishing the people who gave her life because they dared to ask for help? My mother dabbed at her dry eyes with a tissue. The jury looked at her, and I saw a flicker of sympathy in their eyes. Ford was good. He was making me the villain. He was making it seem like I was a dragon hoarding gold while my family starved. I stayed silent. I let him finish. I let him weave his entire narrative of my selfishness and their poverty. When he finally sat down looking satisfied, I stood up. My lawyer Harrison called me to the stand. I walked up the steps and took the oath. I sat down and looked out at the courtroom. I looked at my parents. They wouldn't meet my eyes. Harrison didn't waste time. Ms. Montgomery, the defense claims that you abandoned your family financially. They claim that your parents were forced to sell the house because they had no other option, and you refused to help them. Is that true? No, I said, my voice projecting clearly to the back of the room. It is not true. The defense claims you lived a lavish lifestyle while your parents struggled. Can you describe your financial situation over the last 10 years? I lived in a studio apartment in the North End, I said. I drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic. I shopped at discount grocery stores. I haven't taken a vacation in 7 years. And why is that, Ms. Montgomery? Given your salary as a senior forensic accountant, one would assume you could afford better. I could have, I said, but I didn't have the money. Mr. Ford scoffed loudly from the defense table. Objection. The witness is pleading poverty while her bank statements show she just bought a $1.2 million home in cash. I turned to look at him. I bought that home to stop my parents from stealing it, I said. And to do it, I liquidated my 401k. I emptied my emergency fund. I borrowed against my future. But that isn't where my money went for the last decade. Harrison nodded. Please explain to the court where your money went. I opened the thick black binder I had brought with me to the stand. It hit the wood with a heavy thud. Exhibit F, I said, pulling out a stack of spreadsheets. These are the mortgage statements for the property at 15 Oak Lane, my parents' mansion. You will see that starting 5 years ago, the payments were made from a blind trust called the BM Benevolent Fund. I looked at my mother. Her head snapped up. She looked confused. I am the sole funder of that trust, I said. 5 years ago, my father gambled away the mortgage money. The bank sent a foreclosure notice. I intercepted it. I didn't want them to be homeless, so I set up the trust, and I paid the mortgage. Every month, $5,000 a month, for 5 years. That is $300,000. The courtroom was silent. The jury was leaning forward. Exhibit G. I continued flipping the page. Medical bills for Austin Montgomery. 3 years ago, he claimed he was in a car accident. The truth was, he got into a fight at a club and needed reconstructive dental work and surgery on his hand. He had no insurance. The bill was $45,000. It was paid in full by an anonymous donor. I looked at Austin, who was sitting behind the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, his head hung low. "That was me," I said. "I paid it directly to the hospital so he wouldn't be sued." I kept going. I pulled out document after document. Exhibit H. The heating oil for the mansion during the winter of 2021. $8,000. Paid by me. Exhibit Y. My mother's emergency surgery, which was actually a cosmetic procedure she claimed was life-saving. $15,000. Paid by me. Exhibit J. My father's legal fees when he was sued for breach of contract 4 years ago. $20,000. Paid by me. I looked at Mr. Ford. "You asked why I lived in a shoebox. You asked why I didn't help them. Mr. Ford, I have spent the last 10 years keeping them afloat. I have poured over $500,000 into that house and into their lives. I did it anonymously because I knew if they knew it was me, they wouldn't stop asking. They would bleed me dry." I turned back to the jury. My poverty was not an accident. It was a choice. I chose to live with less so they could keep their facade of wealth. I chose to drive a beat-up car so my mother could drive a BMW. I chose to stay home so my brother could go to clubs. I was the safety net they didn't even know existed. And how did they repay me? My voice broke just for a second before the anger hardened it again. When my grandmother left me the one thing that was just for me, the one thing I didn't have to buy for them, they stole it. They didn't sell that house because they were desperate. They sold it because they are parasites. They had consumed everything I gave them, and they wanted more. They wanted a vacation. They wanted luxury. And they were willing to commit a felony to get it. My mother was sobbing now, her face buried in her hands. My father was staring at me, his mouth open in shock. He hadn't known. He hadn't known about the mortgage. He hadn't known about the bills. He just thought they were lucky. He thought the universe provided. "It wasn't the universe, Dad," I said, answering his unspoken question. "It was me. It was always me." Harrison let the silence hang in the air for a long moment. He looked at the jury. He looked at the judge. "No further questions, Your Honor." I stepped down from the stand. I felt light. The secret I had carried for a decade, the burden of being the invisible pillar holding up their crumbling lives, was finally gone. I had laid it all out. The math was irrefutable. Mr. Ford tried to redirect. He tried to argue that my secret payments proved I had the means to help, that it proved a pattern of support that implied consent. But he was flailing. The jury wasn't looking at him anymore. They were looking at my parents with disgust. They saw the expensive suits my parents had worn to the deposition. They saw the entitlement. They saw the truth. The trial lasted 3 more days, but it was over the moment I closed that binder. The forensic evidence of the forgery was overwhelming. The video of the cash exchange I had orchestrated was the final nail. But it was the financial history that destroyed their character defense. When the jury returned, they didn't even look at the defendants. They handed the slip to the bailiff. "Guilty. On all counts. Conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, aggravated identity theft, tax evasion." Judge Stone, a woman with a reputation for being harsh on white-collar crime, asked my parents to stand for sentencing. She looked over her reading glasses, her expression severe. "I have sat on this bench for 20 years, Judge Stone said, her voice echoing in the silent courtroom. "I have seen greed. I have seen theft. I have seen strangers rob strangers. But rarely have I seen parents cannibalize their own child with such callous disregard." She looked at my mother. "Mrs. Montgomery, you forged your daughter's signature to steal her inheritance. You took money that did not belong to you and used it to fund a lifestyle you could not afford. And when you were caught, you tried to destroy your daughter's reputation. You blamed her for your crimes." She turned to my father. "And you, Mr. Montgomery, you witnessed that signature. You swore an oath that it was valid. You allowed your wife to plunder your daughter's future because you were too weak to stop her. You accepted the benefits of her secret charity for years and repaid her with betrayal. The defense has asked for leniency, she continued. They have cited your age and your lack of prior convictions. However, this court believes that your actions show a deep-seated lack of morality that age does not excuse. You bit the hand that fed you, and then you tried to cut it off. My mother was shaking. She gripped the table for support. I am sentencing you, Brenda Montgomery, to the maximum penalty allowed under the sentencing guidelines, Judge Stone declared. For the count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud, 10 years in federal prison. For tax evasion, 5 years. Sentences to run consecutively, 15 years. My mother let out a wail that sounded like a dying animal. She collapsed into her chair. Gerald Montgomery, the judge said. For your role as an accessory and for perjury, I sentence you to 8 years in federal prison. And as for you, Mr. Austin Montgomery, she said, looking at my brother, you spent stolen money, you fled the country, you abandoned your wife in a foreign jail to save yourself. You are a danger to the financial well-being of anyone who trusts you. 5 years. The gavel banged down. It sounded like a gunshot. I watched as the bailiffs moved in. They handcuffed my mother. She was screaming my name now, begging me to help her, begging me to tell the judge I forgave her. Blair, she screamed. Blair, fix this. You have the money. You can fix this. I didn't move. I didn't look away. I watched them being led out the side door. I watched the doors close behind them. I was alone in the courtroom with Harrison. He started packing up his briefcase. It is done, he said quietly. Yes, I said. It is done. I walked out of the courthouse and into the cool Boston air. The sun was shining. The city was bustling. People were going about their lives, buying coffee, rushing to meetings, worrying about their bills. I took a deep breath. I checked my bank app. The clawback order had gone through. The money from the sale, my money was back in my account. The deed to the house in Beacon Hill was being transferred back to my name. I was not poor anymore. I was not the invisible daughter. I was Blair Montgomery, and I was free. The aftermath of the trial was not a quiet fade to black, it was a slow and public burn. Austin sat in his cell at the Federal Correctional Institution in Danbury. 5 years. That was the price of a vacation he never finished paying for. But the prison sentence was not the worst part of his punishment. The worst part came through the television screen in the common room. Keisha had not stayed in the Dubai jail forever. She was a survivor in the most parasitic sense of the word. She had cut a deal with the local authorities, turning over evidence against Austin regarding the credit card fraud, claiming coercion. She was deported back to the United States 3 months later. And she hit the ground running. She filed for divorce the second her feet touched American soil. It was not a quiet separation. It was a digital execution. She launched a TikTok series titled Surviving the Maldives Scam. It went viral overnight. Millions of people watched as she wept perfect, tearless sobs into the camera, describing how her abusive husband had tricked her into a life of crime, how he had abandoned her in a foreign land. She painted Austin not as a mastermind, but as a pathetic failure who had dragged her down. She mocked his business acumen. She laughed at his dependence on his mother. She posted screenshots of his desperate texts begging her to take the fall. She monetized his destruction. Austin became the most hated man on the internet. He was a meme, a joke, the golden child who had turned into fool's gold. In prison, he was not respected. He was ridiculed. His cellmate called him Maldives. He spent his days mopping floors and his nights listening to the other inmates laugh at the stories his ex-wife was selling for brand deals. He had lost his freedom, his wife, his reputation, and his dignity. He was hollowed out, leaving nothing but the spoiled child who finally had to pay the bill. My parents fared no better. The federal sentencing had been harsh, but the financial dismantling was absolute. The IRS does not forgive. They seized the mansion in Brookline. It was sold at auction for pennies on the dollar to cover the back taxes and the penalties. They seized the cars, they seized the jewelry. They garnished my father's pension down to the legal minimum. Due to their advancing age and my father's deteriorating health, their prison sentences were eventually commuted to strict probation after they served 18 months. But when they walked out of the prison gates, there was no limousine waiting. There was no family gathering. There was just a bus ticket to a subsidized housing complex on the outskirts of the city. I drove past it once just to see. It was a gray concrete building near the highway, the kind of place my mother used to sneer at when we drove past it on our way to the country club. I saw Brenda Montgomery, the woman who had once refused to drink anything but imported wine, pushing a rusted shopping cart toward the discount grocery store. She was wearing a faded coat and cheap sneakers. She looked at the ground. She did not want to be seen. The neighbors at her old country club had erased her. They did not visit. They did not call. To them, poverty was a contagious disease, and Brenda was patient zero. She was alone with Gerald in a two-room apartment, listening to the traffic and the sound of her own regrets. They had traded their daughter for a facade, and now they had neither. As for me, I was busy building something real. It took a year to restore the house in Beacon Hill. I did not just repair it, I honored it. I hired the best contractors in the city using the funds that I had clawed back from the shell company. We stripped away the years of neglect. We restored the original crown molding. We refinished the hardwood floors until they glowed like honey. I turned my grandmother's sewing room into a state-of-the-art home office. I kept one thing exactly as it was, the chest of drawers, the one I had fought the movers for on that terrible Tuesday. It stood in the hallway as a sentinel of my victory. On the one-year anniversary of the verdict, I hosted a party. It was not like my parents' parties. There were no rented tents, no hired waiters sneering at the guests, no shallow conversation about status and money. The house was filled with warmth and light. Jazz music played softly from the speakers. The smell of roasted garlic and rosemary drifted from the kitchen where I was cooking dinner myself. I looked around the room at the people I had invited. This was my family now. Harrison was there standing by the fireplace with a glass of good scotch in his hand. He wasn't billing me by the hour tonight. He was just my friend, the man who had handed me the sword when I was ready to fight. David, the IRS agent, was laughing in the kitchen, helping me chop vegetables. He had risked his career to help me freeze those accounts because he knew what it was like to be the underdog. There were my colleagues from the firm, and the other auditors who had helped me comb through thousands of pages of documents at 3 in the morning without asking for a dime of overtime. There was the hotel manager from the Conrad, who I had kept in touch with, who had sent a bottle of wine as a housewarming gift with a note that read, "To the woman who pays her bills." These were the people who showed up. These were the people who valued loyalty over lineage. I walked to the center of the room and tapped a spoon against my glass. The room quieted. The faces looking back at me were kind. They were genuine. "I want to propose a toast," I said, my voice steady and clear. Harrison raised his glass. "To justice," he said. To be fair, I agreed, but also to clarity. I looked around the beautiful house, my grandmother's legacy, which was finally safe. A year ago, I thought I had lost everything. I continued. I thought I had no family. I thought I was alone. But I learned something in the trenches. I learned that family isn't about whose DNA you share. It isn't about who raised you or who you grew up with. I paused, thinking of my mother pushing her cart in the rain, thinking of Austin sitting in his cell. Family is about who stands beside you when the world tries to knock you down. It is about the people who help you up, not the ones who push you. I raised my glass higher. To the family we choose. To the family we chose. The room echoed. We drank. The wine was delicious. It tasted like freedom. After dinner, as the guests were mingling, I stepped out onto the balcony. The air was crisp, just like it had been on that day I saw the moving truck. But the fear was gone. I looked down at the street. A black car was parked across the way. I saw a figure standing there looking up at the house. It was my father. Gerald. He looked frail. He was wearing a jacket that was too big for him. He was just standing there watching the warm light spilling from the windows of the house he had tried to sell. Our eyes met across the distance. He raised a hand, a weak, tentative wave. A beggar asking for acknowledgement. I did not wave back. I did not feel anger. I did not feel hate. I felt nothing. He was just a stranger standing in the dark. I turned away and went back inside, back to the warmth, back to the laughter, back to the people who loved me. I closed the balcony doors and locked them. I was Blair Montgomery. I was the owner of this house. I was the architect of my own life, and for the first time in 33 years, I was home. The most profound lesson from Blair's harrowing journey is that we must never set ourselves on fire to keep others warm, even if those people are our own flesh and blood. For years, Blair existed as the invisible safety net for a family that viewed her not as a daughter, but as a resource to be exploited. She mistook their dependence for love and their tolerance for acceptance. However, the ultimate betrayal revealed a brutal truth. Toxic individuals do not change because of your kindness. They only change their tactics to take more. Blair's story serves as a powerful reminder that self-worth is inherent, not a currency to be traded for validation from those incapable of giving it. Her true victory wasn't retrieving the millions or seeing her family face consequences. It was the liberation of her own spirit. She demonstrated that family is defined by loyalty, respect, and mutual care, not merely by shared DNA. Sometimes the healthiest choice is to amputate the connections that are poisoning you. Walking away isn't an act of cruelty, it is an act of survival. We learn that justice isn't always about revenge, it's about restoring the balance of your own life and realizing that you are enough all on your own. You have the right to protect your peace, your assets, and your future, even if it means standing alone against the people who were supposed to protect you. If this story of justice and reclaiming power resonated with you, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel for more tales of resilience, and share your own experiences with setting boundaries in the comments below.